Chapter 883. Ha. 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 Under a huge wall at the edge of Eulalie, Noah, who was running out of an alley, stopped running with all his might. Using his hand to support himself against the wall, he bent down slightly and gasped for breath. He was out of breath for a long time. Even in this state, Noah quickly turned his head and looked behind him. After confirming that there was no one behind him, or rather, there was no God chasing after him, he breathed a sigh of relief. Finally got rid of them? It had been almost half an hour since he was found by a group of goddesses. In this half an hour, Noah had been running for his life. That's right. He was running for his life. Although he would not lose his life if he could not escape, he would definitely lose something more important than his life. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was running for his life. Until now, Noah had finally escaped to the edge of Orly and got rid of the large group of goddesses. Even so, Noah still had a look of lingering fear on his face. Didn't they say that the power of gods could not be used in the lower realm? Didn't they say that their physical fitness was no different from that of ordinary people? Then my physical fitness should be much better than those so-called gods, right? Why was I still chased for half an hour before I managed to escape? For the first time, Noah understood how terrifying the so-called gods were. Undoubtedly, Noah had crossed swords with the so-called gods many times in other worlds, and even killed the so-called gods with his own hands. Logically speaking, he should be considered experienced in dealing with those gods. However, in less than 2 months after coming to this world, Noah had been chased by a group of goddesses twice, and he was almost caught in a situation where the other party could only use the power of an ordinary person. It took him a lot of effort to escape from death. Were the gods of this world so terrifying? Of course, if Noah wanted to fight seriously, he would definitely not end up like this. However, it was because he could not fight that he ended up like this. Compared to those ferocious goddesses, the charm of the beautiful gods is much easier to deal with. Noah smiled bitterly and confirmed that there was no one behind him. Then he sighed deeply, stood up straight, raised his head, and looked forward. What entered Noah's eyes was naturally the huge black wall. That was the city wall that surrounded the entire city called Orly. As mentioned before, Orly was a circle as a whole. And this circle is made up of the city wall that encircles the entire Eulalie. Although this city wall was not as tall as the Tower of Babel, it was comparable to a normal city wall. Therefore, looking up from the bottom of the wall, one could still feel an indescribable sense of oppression. It was the instinctive oppression brought by the huge thing. Undoubtedly, I have seen many things that are much more spectacular than this wall, but I can still feel this oppression. Humans are really incredible existences. Leaving behind such a sentimental sentence, Noah glanced around and walked in a certain direction. Kacha, opening a heavy door, Noah walked down a long flight of stairs and came to the outside where the sun was shining. This was the top of the city wall, which was also Noah's destination. Looking out from here, one could see the land, forests, and mountains that extended all the way to the horizon. Looking inside, one could see the bustling Eulalie under the sunlight. However, Noah did not look outside the city wall, nor did he look inside the city wall. Instead, he looked straight ahead. There, a figure with her back facing Noah entered Noah's vision like a beautiful picture. Her long hair that reached her waist swayed with the breeze. The sunlight pouring down from the sky shone on it, making the brilliant golden color even more dazzling. In the whole of Orly, and even in the whole world, the famous swordswoman stood on the city wall with her back facing Noah, forming a very beautiful picture. However, around such a beautiful picture, there were several other figures. Ah! The wheat-skinned Amazon girl who was chatting with the person next to her seemed to be the first to notice Noah's arrival. Her eyes lit up, and then she waved her hand in the direction of Noah with great liveliness. Little brother. Over here. That was the first-level adventurer of the Loki clan, Tiona. Next to her, another wheat-skinned Amazon girl also looked in the direction of Noah and smiled sweetly. Oh. She really came. Who else could it be except for Tiona, who was almost inseparable from Tiona? In addition to the Amazon sisters, there were two other people next to A's. One of them was the elven royal family's strongest Grand Magus, Riveria. She wore a long robe and had long, green hair that reached her waist. She gave off a noble aura. The other was a pure-looking and very cute girl, Leafia, who was also an elf girl and was being trained as Riveria's successor. Looking at the group of 5 girls forming a beautiful scenery and all of them casting their gazes on him at the first moment, Noah was completely astonished. "Why are you all here?" Yesterday, after coming out of the banquet held by the Freya clan, A's mentioned the previous agreement with Noah. That was to try to become stronger in ways other than grace. At that time, because of Loki's uneasiness, or rather, his unwillingness to let his most precious child be taught by other people in the clan, this matter was somewhat unsettled. However, last night, A's brought up this matter again and asked Noah to help her. For this reason, Hasti and Loki made a lot of noise. One of them objected to Noah being too close to the clan of their sworn enemy, saying that it would be suspicious of poaching. The other was the same as before, objecting to letting their most precious child interact too frequently with other clan members, or rather, objecting to A's interacting with any member of the opposite sex. Unfortunately, this time, A's was quite persistent, and Loki couldn't do anything about it. Thus, this matter was really finalized. That was why Noah went out early in the morning and came to the city wall. But it was understandable that A's was here. But what was going on with Riveria, Leafia, Tiona, and Tyogni? Loki asked us to come. Tiona giggled and answered Noah's question. He said that A's can't be alone with the opposite sex, or else she might do something terrible, so he asked us to supervise. Well, Tyogni said in amusement. Although, to us, if we can see A's, who has no interest other than fighting, fall in love with a man, that would be a good thing. Please don't joke around, okay? Leafia immediately glared fiercely at Noah. As if she was trying to convince herself and the others, she shouted loudly. How could Miss A's fall in love with a man? Hearing this, Noah's mouth twitched. If she didn't like men, was she going to be a lesbian? This elven girl really did have some dangerous feelings for A's, didn't she? Instead, it was Tiona who was curious about Leafia's behavior. Leafia, didn't you always say that little brother is a good person? That's different from this. Leafia stuttered, her pretty face blushing. Even if he's a good person, it's inevitable that he'll do something wrong sometimes. We have to take precautions. That's right, that's it. Oh. Leafia actually has such a dishonest time. Tyogni teased. Could this be the so-called Sundara? Of course not. Leafia immediately retorted, but that only caused Tiona and Tyogni to continue teasing her. A's, who couldn't get a word in, didn't know what to do. Alright, we're not at home now. There are outsiders here, so don't go overboard. Riveria called out to stop the girls from messing around. She then turned around and nodded at Noah. Sorry, we were rude. That's how it is. Can you allow us to watch from the side? We won't disturb Sir and A's. Noah curled his lips and nodded nonchalantly. Chapter 884. Perhaps, the 3 girls, Leafia, Tiona, and Tiona appeared here because Loki was worried about letting the most precious swordswoman get along with the opposite sex, so he asked these girls to supervise? However, Riveria's appearance here was definitely not as simple as supervision. Unlike the other girls, Riveria was the real leader of the Loki clan. In the entire Loki clan, besides Loki, who was the main god, the one with the most right to speak was Finn, who was the leader. Then, there was Riveria, who was the deputy leader. Finn Danner, who was known as the Brave. Riveria Lis Ali, who was known as the Nine Devils. Gareth Landlock, who was known as the Great Hero. Everyone knew that these 3 people were the 3 leaders of the Loki clan, one of the most powerful clans in Eulalia. One of these leaders was here now, just to supervise a member of the clan, and not let her have a relationship with other members of the clan. To be honest, even if this person was the only important LV6 member of the Loki clan other than the 3 leaders, it was a bit of a fuss to let the deputy leader personally come out to supervise. Therefore, there might be something to supervise, but there must be another reason for Riveria to be present. That reason was probably to explore the truth of the so-called way to become stronger other than grace, right? After all, Noah had asked AIC in advance to never reveal what he taught except for herself. AIC readily agreed to it. With AIC's character, since she agreed, then even the orders of the main god couldn't pry open her mouth, right? Regarding this, Noah still believed in his own eyes and thought that he wouldn't misjudge people. Loki should also understand this. But even if he couldn't get the so-called way to become stronger, his curiosity as a god and the sense of responsibility to make the clan strong still made Loki send Riveria over to watch from the sidelines in an attempt to see something, right? Therefore, the reason why Riveria came here was because she was worried about AIC. She also wanted to use this as an excuse to openly watch from the sidelines. Unfortunately, Noah had more or less expected this situation and made preparations. Therefore, Noah immediately said this to Aze, who was looking at him closely in front of Riveria, Leafia, Tiona, and Tioni. I'll say this first. My sword skills and battle techniques should be on par with yours. Although I do have some physical abilities other than grace, those are obtained through years of training. So, don't expect me to teach you any secret techniques that will allow you to quickly become stronger. This sentence made AIC slightly startled, and the rest of the girls also looked at each other in dismay. AIC looked at Noah in confusion and asked directly. Then, what do you want to teach me? Hearing this, Noah smiled and asked a question instead of answering. Let me ask you, in this world, what is it that allows one to gain a certain level of power the moment they learn it? And if they use it well, they can even kill enemies above their level? This. AIC hesitated and replied uncertainly. Magic? That's right. Noah nodded. It's magic. With regards to Noah's words, everyone present understood. In this world, magic was equivalent to the treasures of the heroic spirits. It was a trump card and a sure kill skill. Previously, there was also an example. A person with a sword would never be able to fight against an opponent who could create a sea of fire with a wave of his hand. Therefore, the importance and power of magic was imaginable. If one could have magic, even a novice adventurer who could only explore the 1st to 4th level of the underground city would be able to go down to the 10th level and explore alone. The difference between having magic and not having magic was this huge. Looking at AIC, Noah said. You should have seen the magic that I used the first time I went to the 10th level of the underground city and attracted a large group of beastmen to train my basic abilities, right? After hearing Noah's words, everyone, including the spectating girls, except for the puzzled Leafia, recalled the magic that was used to clear the area when they saw Noah training his basic abilities on the 10th level of the underground city. To be precise, it should be magic. Because of Noah's overly large amount of magic, there was a change in the magic from the magic bullet to the magic cannon magic. Of course, in this place, it was not wrong to call it magic, and it was easier to understand. Seeing that AIC recalled the incident that day, Noah suddenly smiled. Is that magic powerful? AIC nodded involuntarily. Then, Noah said something that moved everyone present. Then, if I let you learn another type of magic, it should be able to make you obviously stronger, right? Learn magic? The girls were stunned. Learn magic? Noah said that the other way to become stronger other than grace was to let AIC learn another type of magic? Is this a joke? Your Excellency Noah. Riveria frowned and directly said. Forgive me for being blunt, but if you mean that the other way to become stronger other than grace is to learn magic, then for AIC, it is impossible. That's right, Leafia also spoke up. Humans are unable to learn innate type of magic. These words couldn't be more appropriate for the elves, Riveria and Leafia, to say them. In this world, magic was divided into innate type and acquired type. Innate type of magic referred to magic that involved the magic of the bloodline, and magic that could only be learned through one's own potential and cultivation. Most of these types of magic had a fixed inclination, which meant that the magic that people of the same race could learn was mostly the same, and it was difficult to exceed the norm. Acquired type of magic, on the other hand, was the possibility of magic that was stimulated through the grace of God. Under the inspiration of the grace of God, one could learn at least one, and at most 3 types of magic. The latter was the source of most of the people in this world who possessed magic. The former would only appear in those magical races that were blessed by nature. Unfortunately, humans were not a magical race that was blessed by nature. Once the grace was lost, it would be impossible for them to learn magic on their own like the elves. Unfortunately, AIC was not a magical race that was blessed by nature like the elves. Therefore, everyone felt that Noah's words were strange. Noah was naturally clear about this. Words are not proof. Noah shrugged. So, let me show you the evidence. Saying this, Noah turned his back, took off his coat, and took off his shirt, exposing his muscular back in front of the girls. Wah! Suddenly seeing the body of the opposite sex, Leafia let out a strange cry, and her face turned red. AIC, Riveria, Tiona, and Tyogni subconsciously focused their gaze on the very obvious mysterious pattern on Noah's back. That was Noah's ability value. Noah Doria LV. 2 Strength, S, 967, Durability, S, 976, Agility, S, 971, Agility, S, 988, Magic, S, 954, Mystery, Magic Skill, Protection from the World, Permanent Skill. Equal to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. Among the people present, Tiona and Tyogni could not understand the sacred text. However, AIC, Riveria, and Leafia could understand the sacred text. Therefore, when the 3 girls deciphered Noah's ability value and imprinted it into their minds, the 3 girls were completely stunned on the spot. That's impossible. Leafia subconsciously covered her mouth with her little hand and cried out in surprise. How could this be? Riveria seemed to have been caught off guard and was stunned on the spot. AIC looked closely at the ability value on Noah's back, and after confirming the contents, her eyes could not help but flicker. Tiona and Tyogni, who could not understand the sacred text, looked at AIC, Riveria, and Leafia's reactions and became curious. Chapter 885. What's wrong? What's wrong? Seeing A's, Riveria, and Rafia staring at Noah's ability value with incredulity, Tiona and Tyogni hurriedly asked. What's wrong with that ability value? A's, Riveria, and Rafia ignored Tiona and Tyogni. Instead, they kept checking Noah's ability value over and over again until they were sure that they weren't mistaken. They fell into an indescribable silence. Hey, what's going on? Tiona jumped up and down as if her heart was being scratched by a kitten. Say something. Yeah. Even Tyogni was a little anxious. What's wrong with that ability value? Riveria and Rafia looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Rafia was still in disbelief. Why is the magic column empty? Tiona and Tyogni couldn't understand the meaning of this sentence at first. When they finally reacted, their eyes widened. You're saying that his magic column is empty? Tyogni asked in surprise. Impossible. Undoubtedly, he used magic that day in the dungeon. Yeah. Tiona nodded repeatedly. I saw it too. A's, Riveria, and even Finn saw it. There's no mistake. If you put it that way, I don't know what's going on either. Leafia looked distressed. I wasn't there that day. In fact, other than the fact that the magic column was empty, A's, Riveria, and Rafia were also surprised. First, Noah's basic ability value. His ability value was S stage. This was the first time A's and the others heard that someone's ability value could reach this level. Second, Noah's level. Undoubtedly, Noah was an ordinary person who didn't receive any favor more than a month ago. But now, he had risen to LV, too. Even A's, who had seen Noah receiving Hestia's favor, and was still in its initial state, was stunned by this fact, let alone Revelia and Leafia, who had only heard about it. The third was Noah's ability to develop. Mysterious, Noah actually possessed a rare development ability that only 5 people in the entire Eulalia possessed. This surprised Aes, Reveria, and Leafia. Then there was the skill, World's Protection. Aes, who had already seen Noah's ability once, was fine with it, but Reveria and Leafia, who were seeing it for the first time, were more or less astonished. Because he had never heard of this skill before. That was undoubtedly a rare skill, and it was even more likely to be a unique skill. The information revealed by the ability value shocked Aes, Reveria, and Leafia. Reveria was the first to calm down. After hesitating for a moment, she solemnly spoke to Noah. "Is it okay to let us outsiders see your ability value? There's nothing to worry about." Noah shrugged nonchalantly as he put on his clothes, looking as though he was doing whatever he wanted. Although the ability value is a secret of the individual and the clan, it is also because they are worried that if it is revealed, the clan that may become the enemy will be on guard and even plan to deal with them. But I'm different from you. I didn't completely rely on favor to gain my power. Saying this, Noah looked at Reveria with a smile that wasn't a smile. Leak out important information and let the enemy set up all kinds of traps. However, the real trump card is hidden under the leaked information. Suddenly take it out when the enemy thinks that you are done for. Don't you think that this is more effective than simply hiding it? Reveria's expression changed slightly. She lowered her head and remained silent. Let's get back to the topic. Noah changed the topic and looked at Aes, who had been staring at him. As you can see, my magic column is empty. My magic is completely self-taught, and it's not a magic that can only be learned by magical races like elves. It's a magic that can be learned by anyone as long as they put in the effort. So, can you still say that I can't let you learn magic and become stronger? A magic that can be learned by anyone? Leafia said subconsciously. How can that? However, Leafia couldn't continue halfway through her words. Aes, Reveria, Tiona, and Tiona all understood why Leafia couldn't continue. It won't consume the broken magic sword. An independent space that can store items. It can match the strongest existence of LV7 with a LV2 level. Noah has taken out a lot of these incredible things. Since that was the case, what was so strange about him coming up with a spell that anyone could learn? In fact, Noah did intend to let Aes learn the magic that he once had, crushing magic. This was the only thing that Noah could teach Aes. After all, magic needed to be connected to the magic base plate in the world of the moon. Even if he taught it to Aes, Aes couldn't use it. The 3 major magic of Fairy Tale were the treasures of the guild. Even Makarov and Laxus only had one of them. As the candidate for the next president of Fairy Tale, Noah naturally couldn't give away the treasure of the guild. Then, the only thing that could be taught to Aes was crushing magic. Wang! A golden ripple suddenly reverberated in the air, spitting out a fist-sized, crystal ball-like clear pearl. It fell and landed on Noah's outstretched hand. This is a tool that can be used to record information. I've recorded the magic that I want you to learn in it. Noah held Aes' hand and placed the pearl in her hand. Crush this and you'll be able to obtain the information within. This was the method that Noah had prepared beforehand. This way, even if Reveria was watching from the side, she wouldn't be able to obtain the method to use crushing magic. Aic held the orb tightly, and her usually expressionless face began to show traces of solemnity. Bang! With a loud crack, the orb in Aic's hand was crushed into pieces. Suddenly, a gorgeous golden light suddenly appeared and shot into A's forehead like an arrow. A's, Miss A's. Reveria, Leafia, Tiona, and the other girls cried out in alarm. However, A's didn't have time to respond to her companions' calls. A huge amount of information poured into A's mind, causing A's pupils to become slightly lax. After a while, they refocused. How is it? Noah looked straight at A's. Are you confident that you'll be able to learn it? A's nodded her head heavily, her eyes revealing a trace of determination. Is that so? Noah took a step back. Then, according to the memories in your mind, use crushing magic once. Aze nodded her head again and closed her eyes. Actually, Noah wasn't confident that Aze would be able to learn crushing magic. After all, the people of this world didn't have magic in their bodies. Magic also required the consumption of mental strength to use. In the process of using magic, Noah didn't know if the magic converted from mental strength could be used to use magic from other worlds. However, since AIC had used the method of exhausting her mental strength to release the true name of the sword in the stone, it proved that the conversion of mental strength into magical power should have the same effect as the magical power of other worlds. It was entirely possible to use crushing magic by consuming mental strength. However, in the next second, something unexpected happened. A's face suddenly changed. Clang. Following that, from AIC's body, a burst of brilliant white light suddenly burst forth, like a tide, surging in all directions. Wang. With AIC as the center, the city wall that was enveloped by the white light shuddered slightly. Then, white lines suddenly appeared and divided the city wall into squares. Seeing this scene, Riveria, Leafia, Tiona, and Tyogni were shocked. Even Noah's face changed slightly. Not good. Chapter 886. At the corner of the city wall surrounding Olalai, a dazzling white light that was even more dazzling than the sun's rays, like a tidal wave, instantly expanded to the surroundings, and continued to rise sharply. Everywhere that was covered by the brilliant white light, a corner of the city wall was directly divided by a white line. It trembled frequently, as if it could explode at any time. It looked quite dangerous. Ah! In the center of the white light, Aze let out a miserable cry. It wasn't because of pain, but because she was trying to control the magic that had gone out of control. Aze, Miss Aze. Leafia, Tiona, and Tyone were anxious. Just as they were about to rush into the dazzling white light, Riveria shouted. Don't touch that light. It's very dangerous. As expected of the existence known as the most powerful archmage in Eulalia. Even though crushing magic wasn't a type of magic from this world, Riveria, with her astounding attainments in magic, was still able to more or less see through the properties of crushing magic and understand the danger of coming into contact with the white light. Under such circumstances, Leafia, Tiona, and Tyone reflexively stopped and didn't dare to move forward. They could only anxiously wait at the edge of the white light. Whoosh! But at this moment, a black shadow ignored Riveria's warning and fiercely shot into the dazzling white light. The moment the dazzling white light came into contact with the black shadow, it was as if it was dispelled by fog and directly disappeared. Immediately, in the eyes of Riveria, Leafia, Tiona, and Tyone, the dazzling white light was like a sea that was suddenly parted. Wherever the black shadow passed, the white light turned into mist and dissipated, forming a path. Immediately after, Noah, who had turned into a black shadow, suddenly flashed in front of Aze, who was trying her best to control shatter magic, and fiercely hugged Aze. The dazzling white light bursting out from Aze's body suddenly paused. Poof! Like a scattered mist, the dazzling white light with Aze as the center suddenly disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Aze's knees went soft and she sat on the ground. She panted and her eyes were filled with unconcealable exhaustion. Obviously, although the shatter magic just now went out of control, it still consumed most of A's mental strength. She didn't directly exhaust it and fell into a deep sleep. It was all thanks to Noah's curse resistance that could nullify mystical powers that didn't reach the realm of gods. In other words, Noah's hug directly nullified the shatter magic from A's body. A's, Miss A's. Only then did Riveria, Leafia, Tiona, and the other girls rush over to AIC's side. Miss AIC. Leafia squatted down and supported AIC, her face full of worry. A's, Rifia. A's was still panting. She looked at Rifia tiredly and shook her head. I'm fine, Riveria sized up A's. After confirming that A's was indeed fine, she turned her head and looked at Noah. That magic just now went out of control, right? That's right. Noah laughed bitterly. This magic is very difficult to control. If it's not careful, it will go out of control. Once it goes out of control, everything in the surroundings will not be spared. Everything in the surroundings will not be spared? Riveria frowned. What kind of magic is that? It's a magic called shatter. Noah didn't hide it and said directly. As the name suggests, it can shatter everything, including the human body and magic. Such a dangerous magic? Tiona was bewildered. Then, just now. Noah rubbed his eyebrows. Just now, if I didn't stop it, the city wall here would probably be missing a piece. Hearing this, the group of girls finally understood what Riveria meant when she said that it was dangerous. You actually let Ace learn such a dangerous magic? Riveria's frown deepened, and her tone even carried a hint of questioning. If Ace can't control this magic, then won't everyone around her be in danger? Don't worry. Noah glanced at Riveria. I've already considered this point. After saying this, Noah stretched out a hand and directly reached into the space. To be more precise, it should be said that he reached into a golden ripple that reverberated in the space beside him. After a while, Noah pulled out a very beautiful bracelet that seemed to be made of ivory from his treasury. Squatting down, this time Noah extended a hand to Ace. Give me your hand. Ace raised her head and looked at Noah's outstretched hand. After hesitating for a moment, she obediently put her hand in Noah's palm. Under everyone's gaze, Noah put the bracelet on Ace's wrist, and while putting it on, he explained. This is a bracelet that can suppress the activation of magic. As long as you wear it, you won't be able to activate magic, including your acquired magic from grace. So, you can use it according to the situation. It's the same when you practice crush magic. Once you lose control of your magic, wear it immediately, and the magic will be cancelled. A bracelet that can suppress magic? Leafia, Tiona looked at the bracelet on Ace's wrist curiously. You really are an incredible person. Riveria sighed. Not only do you have incredible abilities, but you also have so many incredible things. I really want to know where all these things came from. Yeah. Tiona's eyes began to sparkle as she looked at Noah. Little brother, what other incredible things do you have? Take them out for us to see. Don't keep saying stupid things, idiot, Tiona reprimanded Tiona. I don't have the obligation to take out my own things to satisfy your curiosity. Despite saying that, Tiona herself was also very curious. Even Leafia kept stealing glances at Noah, a look of curiosity in her eyes. In short, take care of yourself. Noah ignored the others and only told Ace. Your mental power is very strong. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to release the true name of the sword in the stone. However, the stronger your mental power, the more powerful the magic crush you can use. If you don't think of a way to control it, it is possible that your Loki clan's headquarters will be blown to pieces. Hearing that, everyone, including Riveria, shuddered. Ace was the only one who nodded heavily. She looked at Noah with eyes full of gratitude. Thank you for giving me such great power. Don't thank me. Noah spread out his hands. I just don't want this magic to be inherited by no one. Since Magic Crush was integrated into Noah's authority, Noah could only use Magic Crush when he was using the poured incarnation. He could no longer use Magic Crush by learning Magic Crush from scratch. For example, the magic called Magic Crush was like a full cup of water. When it was integrated into Noah's authority, it only added sugar and turned into sugar water. It did not disappear. If Noah learned Magic Crush from scratch, the water called Magic Crush would overflow even if it was poured into the cup. Not only would it run away, it would also turn into sugar water like the water in the cup. Therefore, Noah could no longer use Magic Crush without using authority. Then, if teaching this magic to Ace could help her, Kildas would probably be happy, right? I've given you the power you want. I've also helped you solve the problem of losing control of your magic. Now, it's up to you how to control and familiarize yourself with this magic. Noah folded his arms. I have done what I can do. I can't always watch over you. You have to be careful. Don't make any accidents. After saying that, Noah wanted to leave, but Ace quickly grabbed the corner of his clothes. That. Ace said hesitantly. Can I repay you? Chapter 887. Eulalie, at a corner of West Main Street. Noah stood beside the busy street, raised his head, and looked at the building in front of him. It was a 2-story building. The door of the building was open to the outside at all times. The inside was filled with wooden tables and chairs. Not only were the adventurers eating and drinking, but they were also laughing and joking around. Sometimes, they would even tease the young girls in staff uniforms that walked past them, making the whole shop seem very lively. The plaque hanging on the shop was marked with words in the common language. The Mistress of Plenty. Looking at the familiar shop, Noah was a little dumbfounded and turned his gaze to AIC and the others beside him. Don't tell me your so-called repayment is to treat me to a meal here? Facing Noah's question, AIC nodded gently. Her usually expressionless face seemed to faintly show a little embarrassment. Evidently, AIC didn't know how to repay Noah. In the end, she came to the conclusion that she would treat Noah to a meal. Moreover, it was at the Mistress of Plenty that Noah had been to once before. This is a hotel that we come to more often. Tiona smiled mischievously. Well, it's said that we come here more often, but actually, Loki is a little familiar with the owner here. If there is any celebration banquet in the clan tribe, Loki will almost always bring us here. Looking at you, you seem to have been here before, right? Tiona smiled slightly. The cuisine here is not bad. If we want to have a good meal, then the first place we think of is here. I've only been here once, and then I haven't patronized it again. Noah scratched his cheek. Well, when I first came to Eulalie, a clerk here helped me a lot. It's not bad to patronize this shop. It's decided then. Tiona rushed into the shop as if she couldn't wait any longer. Let's go. Idiot, don't rush to the front. Tiona shouted and chased after her. Don't forget, AIC is here today to thank your little brother. Miss Tiona. Miss Tyogni. Rafia almost instinctively chased after her. Please don't run so fast. In the blink of an eye, Leafia, Tiona, and Tiorn all rushed into the inn. These guys. Riveria frowned, but sighed helplessly. He doesn't know his limits either. Well, being lively is a good thing. Noah smiled. No one would want to stay in a lifeless clan tribe. If the atmosphere between the members of the clan tribe on the front line is relatively relaxed, the members below should also feel relaxed, right? AIC did not say anything, but she nodded in agreement. Although they hadn't known each other for a long time, Noah had already understood that AIC wasn't as cold as she looked. She was just not good at expressing her emotions, or it could be said that she was more innocent and natural. Therefore, there was no doubt that AIC also liked such an atmosphere. Riveria actually didn't dislike this, but as a member of the Elven royal family, even if she wasn't old-fashioned in her thinking, she still had a strict side to her. She didn't want her companions in the clan to be too noisy in the presence of outsiders, right? Under such circumstances, Noah, AIC, and Riveria entered the inn. Welcome, just like the first time Noah came, a shop assistant dressed as a waiter came out to greet him as soon as he entered the inn. However, it was different from the last time Noah came. This time, it wasn't the playful and cute she-er who came out to greet him, but another young girl. She was a young girl with long ears and light blonde curly hair that reached her shoulders. She had a cold expression and gave off a cool vibe. Seeing the pair of long ears, Noah was somewhat surprised. An elf? Yes. It seemed like it wasn't the first time that the elf girl had encountered such a reaction. She just responded indifferently and immediately began to greet them in a businesslike manner. Everyone, please come this way. The elf girl seemed to know the group of first-level adventurers from the clan tribe of Loki and very politely led Noah, AIC, and Riveria into the inn. In the most conspicuous position in the inn, Tiona was waving her hand in their direction. Little brother. AIC. Riveria. This way. Without Tiona's beckoning, the elf girl naturally led Noah, AIC, and Riveria to the seats where Tiona, Tyogni, and Leafia were seated. After sitting down, the elf girl began to ask unhurriedly. May I ask, what would you like to order? Just as Tiona was about to place her order, Tiona held her back. Didn't I tell you that I'm here to invite this little brother of yours today? Since when was it your turn to order? Tiona immediately lowered her head in dejection. Tiona, AIC said softly as though she couldn't bear to see Tiona's dejected look. You can order what you like too. Really? Tiona's spirits were lifted, and she hugged AIC. Wah. I like AIC the most. Miss Tiona. Rafia said with some dissatisfaction and hesitation. Don't keep hugging Miss AIC. What's wrong, Leafia? Leafia? Tiona smiled mischievously. Are you envious? That's not it. Leafia retorted with a hint of panic. I just feel that it's not good to be hugging in front of so many people. What's wrong with that? Tiona pressed her face against AIC's and giggled. AIC is my special guest. Leafia immediately bit her lips in regret and envy, causing Tyogni and Riveria to break into laughter. AIC obviously didn't dislike Tiona's intimacy, but she was a little embarrassed. Noah didn't dislike this atmosphere either. He chuckled and suddenly thought of something. He turned to the elven girl who had been waiting for them to order. By the way, is Miss She-er here? She-er. Finally, there was a slight change in the elf tribe's pretty face. After a slight pause, she looked at Noah. Do you know She-er? Miss She helped me the last time I came to this restaurant. I haven't thanked her yet. Is she busy now? Noah asked. If she is, I won't disturb her. Please help me tell her that I'm very grateful for that time at the bookstore. Understood. The elf girl nodded obediently. Perhaps it was because Noah was acquainted with her companions in the shop, but the cold look on her face melted a little. I'll pass on your message to She-er. Sorry to trouble you, Noah thanked him and began to order the food. It didn't take long for the elven girl to leave. Looking at the elven girl's back, Noah sighed. So there is an elven clerk in this restaurant. I didn't notice it the last time I came. The elves were a very unique race. Not only did they have the bloodline to learn innate magic, but they also had an outstanding appearance compared to other races. This made the elves have a relatively high self-esteem. With such self-esteem, it was indeed surprising that they were still working as a clerk in a restaurant. Her name is Rue Leon. Riveria also looked at the elven girl who was walking to the kitchen. In fact, the owner of this restaurant often takes in some children who have unspeakable difficulties. So, almost every clerk here has some unspeakable secrets. That child is just one of them. Hearing this, Noah nodded and expressed his understanding. If there was something unspeakable, then it wouldn't be strange. While waiting for the food to be served, Noah chatted with the group of girls from Rocky's clan. Most of the topics revolved around Noah. After all, Noah had so many unbelievable things, so naturally, it would arouse the curiosity of others. However, at a certain moment, such a voice drilled into Noah's ears. Oh. Isn't this the little devil who has been rumored to be a god recently? Chapter 888. Oh. Isn't this the little brat who has been rumored to be a god recently? When such an ear-piercing voice, which seemed to have been deliberately increased in volume, reverberated throughout the noisy hotel, the noise level of the entire hotel began to decrease. Noah and the others, who were chatting happily, were also attracted by the voice. They turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. What they saw was a group of adventurers sitting next to Noah and the others. The group of adventurers seemed to have just come in from outside the door. There were no dishes on the table, and it was still very clean. This group of adventurers was a combination of orcs, dwarves, and Amazons. There were about 7 or 8 of them, and they were all equipped with armor and leather armor. They were all carrying weapons. It was as if they were not here to drink and eat, but to go to war. The words just now came from the mouth of one of the orc adventurers. And this orc, at this time, was turning his body sideways and looking in a direction with a mocking expression. That direction was where Noah and the others were. And that line of sight was obviously cast on Noah. In other words, the harsh voice just now was clearly aimed at Noah. Recently, haven't there been a group of gods and high-level adventurers been spreading that a little brat who hasn't even got a title and whose level is at most LV2 can actually fight to a draw with Olali's ultimate weapon? The orc adventurer glanced sideways at Noah and laughed disdainfully. Many of the main gods of the clan tribe seem to have the idea of poaching this little brat. Why don't they think about whether it's more of a show? Anyway, I don't believe it. The orc adventurer purposely yelled at his companions as he said that. Hey! Do you believe it? The voice full of the intention to find fault resounded in every corner of the noisy hotel, and the people around began to focus their eyes. They also stopped talking and looked like they were ready to watch a good show. And the orc adventurer's companions also very cooperatively laughed one after another. Of course I don't believe it. It's just those white-eyed gods deliberately creating a lively topic to relieve their boredom, right? That's right. If a LV2 can challenge a LV7, then we can all become Eulalia's ultimate weapons. That's right. The mocking laughter of a group of people resounded throughout the entire hotel, causing the atmosphere to become oppressive. Not only that, but the group of adventurers also brazenly said harsh words while deliberately not mentioning the name of the person they were mocking. However, their eyes frequently moved in the direction of Noah, their faces full of disdain. AIC and the others started to frown when they saw that expression on his face. Noah glanced at the group of adventurers after realizing that he was being picked on for no reason. Then, he turned his head away as if nothing had happened and drank the free wine provided before the meal. What the hell are those guys doing? Tiona, on the other hand, spoke up for Noah. You can't do it, so you're jealous? And it seems that they all belong to the same clan. Tiona pouted in the direction of the adventurers. Look, that coat of arms. Under Tiona's guidance, Noah and the others also turned their eyes in the direction of the group of adventurers. They saw that on the shoulders of the group of adventurers, there was a coat of arms engraved with a golden bow and a burning sun. Including the orc adventurer, the group of adventurers all belonged to the same clan. That's... Riveria seemed to recognize the coat of arms. Isn't that the coat of arms of Apollo's clan? Apollo's clan? AIC, Leafia, Tiona, and Tiona all raised their eyebrows. Apollo's clan? Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. Apollo. This deity was very famous. Of course, that was referring to myths. In this world, Noah had yet to see Apollo, so he didn't know what kind of god Apollo was. However, this follower of Apollo was the first to find fault with Noah. The way I see it, there's an 80% chance that he drank some elixir accidentally made by a famous pharmacist, and somehow got a temporary boost in strength. That's why he dares to show off in front of the fierce one, right? The orc adventurer repeatedly raised his voice, trying his best to ridicule. Or maybe it's not a person, but a humanoid monster that came out of the dungeon? The adventurers sitting at the same table as the orc adventurer all burst into laughter. Even the surrounding guests began to laugh more or less. Those guys, Tiona couldn't help but want to stand up, but she was hugged by Leafia who was sitting beside her. Miss Tiona. Don't cause trouble. Tiona, calm down. Riveria calmly said. If you make a move, it will cause a lot of trouble. They're not laughing at us. Tiona folded her arms. If we don't make a move, then little brother's position will become even more difficult. Tiona. AIC also looked at Tiona and shook her head. Don't be rash. But... Tiona looked angrily at Noah who was leisurely drinking his wine. Little brother, don't you feel angry when they say that about you? To be honest, I really don't. Noah acted as though he didn't hear anything. Or rather, he simply ignored the adventurers and smiled. If I get angry when people find fault with me, then I'll probably be angry every day for a year. After all, it wasn't the first time that people found fault with Noah. Even if Noah had a strong and domineering side, he wouldn't go so far as to pick a fight with those small fries. Otherwise, when Noah was in the world of Dark Bullet, he would have been tired out by those small fries in the name of eliminating the cursed child. Although I can't say that I'm used to it, I won't go so far as to pick a fight with some guys who are just talking nonsense. Noah's expression was indifferent. In the case that they haven't touched my bottom line yet. Hearing this sentence, AIC, Riveria, Leafia, Tiona, and Tiona looked at each other. Why does this sentence sound like it won't be long before the other party touches Noah's bottom line? Ignoring those adventurers who had been laughing at them, Noah and the group of girls of Loki's clan directly ignored them and once again laughed and chatted with each other. Seeing this scene, the surrounding guests who were ready to watch a good show also turned their heads away in disappointment and continued to drink and fool around, restoring the lively atmosphere of the hotel. As a result, the adventurers who were mocking the adventurers were like clowns trying to amuse the crowd. And this undoubtedly annoyed the other party. It was just like what Noah had said. For small fries like this, the best way was to ignore them. However, the more you ignored them, the more arrogant they would be. Then, when the other party was arrogant to a certain extent, what would they do? There was no doubt that they would step on Noah's bottom line. Just as Noah and the group of girls of Loki's clan were laughing and chatting, the orc adventurer suddenly picked up a free drink on the table and sneered. Sorry, my hand slipped. After that, the orc adventurer directly threw the glass of drink in the direction of Noah. However, at the same time, another glass of drink was suddenly thrown into the air and fiercely hit the drink thrown by the orc adventurer. Bang! With a clear muffled sound, the two glasses of drinks fell at the same time, spilling all the drinks inside. Coincidentally, all the poured drinks were all splashed in the direction of the orc adventurer. The orc adventurer even maintained the motion of throwing the wine glass, and then, the fragrant wine splashed in front of him. Pah! As if being slapped in the face, all the wine in the air splashed on the orc adventurer's face, drenching his head and clothes. The orc adventurer couldn't even react and just stood there blankly with a silly look on his face. In this regard, Noah just glanced at the orc adventurer and said faintly, "Sorry, my hand slipped." Suddenly, the tense atmosphere of the scene exploded. Chapter 889. You stinking brat. The orc adventurer who had been splashed with wine finally reacted, and a furious expression appeared on his face. Not only that, all the adventurers who were sitting with the orc adventurer all stood up, clenched the weapons in their hands, and looked fiercely in the direction of Noah's group. Seeing this, Noah's eyes flashed, and even Riveria's expression changed. As for the surrounding guests, they were not surprised, but happy. Oh. Are they going to fight? Yay, yay. Let's fight. Similar voices continued to come from the surroundings. As if being indulged by such voices, the orc adventurer was the first to raise his weapon. Stinking brat. I'll make you regret this. After saying that, led by the orc adventurer, a group of adventurers from Apollo's clan was about to rush in the direction of Noah, but a faint voice broke in. Sorry to keep you waiting. After saying that, the elf girl, who was also the shop assistant called Lou by Riveria, walked towards Noah's table with the dishes in her hands. She didn't seem to notice the aggressive group of adventurers from Apollo's family at all. She ignored the hostile atmosphere and walked straight to Noah's table. These are the dishes you ordered, please enjoy. After saying that, the elf girl began to put the dishes on the table of Noah's group. Her movements looked slow, and she didn't care about the dangerous atmosphere at all. Her expression was still indifferent. This made AIC's group a little strange, even Noah was a little speechless. Even Noah's group was like this, the group of adventurers from Apollo's clan was even more embarrassed. Stinking bitch. The orc adventurer angrily cursed. Do you want to die? However, as soon as the voice fell, the elf girl's gaze swept toward the orc adventurer. It was a gaze filled with coldness and callousness. It was extremely sharp, causing one's heart to shrink and the air to freeze. The orc adventurer who was yelling at the elf girl's face stiffened, and he was frozen in place by the extraordinary pressure. Noah also felt the extraordinary pressure from the elf girl's body, and his brows slightly raised. In such a situation, the elf girl said lightly, "I don't want to be rough in the shop, but if someone wants to be rough in the shop, then I can only make a move." From the elf girl's tone, no one could hear the meaning of flaunting her superiority. It gave people the feeling that if the elf girl made a move, then the adventurers from Apollo's clan would absolutely not be able to touch a hair of her. "You." The orc adventurer's face suddenly turned green and then white, as if he was about to become angry and desperate. But at this moment, the elf girl made a move. Duh! In an extremely subtle sound, the elf girl suddenly raised one of her hands. In that hand, a kodachi silently appeared. Except for Noah, Ace, Riveria, Tiona, and Tioni, no one saw when the kodachi appeared in the elf girl's hand. Of course, the group of clowns from Apollo's clan led by the orc adventurer didn't notice it either. They immediately understood that the elf girl's ability was absolutely proportional to her attitude, and it was definitely not something they could reach. Remember this. The group of adventurers from Apollo's clan all fled toward the direction of the door with a pale face. At the same time, the kodachi in the elf girl's hand disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared before. She returned to the feeling of an ordinary hotel clerk. But clearly seeing the scene just now, no one in the room would treat the elf girl as an ordinary clerk again. The way they looked at the elf girl completely changed. Only the people at Noah's table were still so calm. "What the hell?" Tioni couldn't help but complain. "Since you want to run, then don't look for trouble from the beginning." "That's right." Tioni mercilessly made fun of him. "So lame." Noah shook his head with a smile, then turned his head and looked at the elf girl. "Ms. Liu, thank you for your help. Please don't mention it." The elf girl didn't seem to care about this matter at all. She just looked to the side. "I was also asked by a friend." As if to prove the authenticity of the elf girl's words, a playful and cute girl poked her head out from the kitchen and stuck out her tongue at Noah. That was naturally Sheer. "I see," Noah said helplessly. "I was helped by Miss Sheer again. She rarely asks me for help directly, but when she saw that you were in trouble, she immediately asked me to help you. I'm sure that in Sheer's heart, you must be an important friend, right?" The elf girl's face was stern, and her tone was quite indifferent. However, the words she said were not as cold as it seemed on the surface. "Since you are Sheer's friend, then I should help you." With that said, the elf girl revealed a faint smile that was difficult to notice. "Moreover, you seem to be a strong and gentle person." Noah was confused. "How do you say that?" The one who answered Noah's question was not the elf girl, but Leafia, who was on the side. "That's right." Leafia nodded repeatedly. "Mr. Noah must be a strong and gentle person." Noah blinked. "Why do you say that?" "Because." Leafia lowered her head with her cheeks slightly blushing. "When, the first time we met, you touched my head, and I didn't resist." "Didn't resist?" Noah was even more confused. "Didn't resist?" Ace, Tiona, and Tyogni looked at each other. "Didn't resist?" The elf girl was obviously a little surprised. She frowned and immediately looked straight at Noah. "Sorry, I was rude." After saying that, without giving Noah a chance to react, the elf girl reached out her hand, grabbed Noah's hand, and held it tightly. When she held Noah's hand tightly, the elf girl hesitated for a moment. However, that hesitation, after successfully holding Noah's hand, turned into surprise. Holding Noah's hand tightly, the elf girl stared blankly at Noah's face and murmured. He really didn't resist, being held by a girl he met for the first time, and with such behavior, Noah couldn't help but feel awkward. He looked at Riveria. Can you explain the current situation? Don't you know? When Riveria saw that the elf girl held Noah's hand and didn't resist Noah, her expression towards Noah became much gentler. Although it's a little strange for me to say this as an elf royalty, the elves do have a kind of mysophobia that is hard to compliment. Under normal circumstances, they would never allow those who they don't approve of to touch any part of their body. Not to mention someone they just met. Leafia nodded her little head. Only the gentle and righteous people will not be rejected by the elves. The touch of the ugly and lustful people will never be accepted by the elves. It's just a word. The Amazon sisters, Tiona and Tyogni, laughed at the same time. You're a good person. Noah was speechless when such an obvious card was given. You're indeed She-Ur's friend. The elf girl seemed to have reacted. She let go of Noah's hand without hesitation, and the extremely faint smile on her face became slightly more obvious. You're a person worthy of respect. Even Noah looked a little unnatural when he was praised by the elf girl so openly. But Noah didn't notice it. When the elf girl held Noah's hand and held it tightly, beside her, AIC's clear and transparent eyes slightly fluctuated a few times. Only AIC knew. At the moment when the elf girl held Noah's hand, there was a trace of inexplicable strangeness in her heart. It was as if AIC didn't really want to see the elf girl holding Noah's hand. With one hand on her heart, AIC murmured with some confusion. Why? Chapter 890. In order to let AIC learn crushing magic, Noah went out early in the morning and went to the agreed place with AIC, which was the direction of Eulalia's city wall. After a lot of twists and turns in the middle, plus chatting and drinking in the rich mistress, when Noah came out of the rich mistress, it was almost noon. Then, little brother, we'll go back first. We had a good chat, let's continue next time. The Amazon sisters Tiona and Tiona said goodbye to Noah in front of the hotel, and they were quite enthusiastic. People who didn't know would think that these two girls were acting friendly. AIC didn't directly say anything, but she just looked at Noah as usual. Rifia, who was on the side, glared at Noah, making Noah speechless. Riveria slightly moved closer to Noah, put her mouth close to Noah's ear, and said in a mosquito-like voice. Be careful, those adventurers of the Apollo family may not just want to find trouble with you. Noah's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't say anything on the surface. He just nodded with a smile. Then let's part here, we'll have a meal together in the future. Okay, in the voice of Tiona and Tiona, Noah turned around, waved his hand, and plunged into the crowd under the gaze of a group of Loki family girls. After a while, he disappeared into the crowd. Miss AIC. Rifia said to AIC, who had been looking at the direction where Noah left. Let's go. AIC nodded, and one of her hands involuntarily touched the magic activation bracelet on her wrist, then turned around and left with her companions. In the crowd, Noah walked leisurely, but he didn't bump into a single person. While walking forward, he chuckled. Did Riveria discover it as well? When the group of adventurers from Apollo's spawn blatantly showed signs of attacking, Noah more or less sensed that they had other motives. It was because Ace, Riveria, Leafia, Tiona, and Tyan were by Noah's side. The adventurers of Apollo's family were all superior adventurers. However, they were not great adventurers. At most, they were level 3 adventurers, which was LV2 adventurers. That was why even if the adventurers felt that Noah had used some kind of trick to force Otto back, there was no need to be afraid of him. However, the ranks of Ace, Riveria, Leafia, Tiona, and Tyan were the real deal. There was absolutely no falsification. Ace and Riveria were LV6. Tiona and Tiona were LV5. Although Leafia did not have the strength of a level 1 adventurer, she was still LV3. As the celebrities of Loki's spawn, the strength of these girls was widely known. There was almost no adventurer who didn't know these celebrities of Loki's spawn, including Apollo's spawn. And knowing that Ace and her party were beside Noah and sitting at the same table, they seemed to have a good relationship. It was obvious that they were on Noah's side, but the adventurers of Apollo's spawn still planned to attack. Wasn't this strange? At least, Noah felt that the adventurers of Apollo's spawn were definitely not just looking for trouble. Sure enough, in this world, I'm destined to be entangled with all kinds of troubles. After leaving such a remark, Noah put all these matters to the back of his mind and quickened his pace in the direction of his home. Right now, there was too little information. Even if he knew what the adventurers of Apollo's spawn were planning, it was impossible to know the truth in one go. Maybe it's not those adventurers who are planning to do something? Noah muttered to himself with a deep meaning. Soon after, he smiled and stopped thinking about it. Then, he walked in the direction of his home. Unfortunately, even Noah didn't have the ability to predict the future. Therefore, it was impossible for Noah to know. In fact, trouble has already come to him. When Noah returned to the base camp of Hestia's clan, the scene that appeared in front of him made him stop in his tracks. In front of the base camp belonging to Noah, Hestia, and Bel, all the pedestrians on the street were divided into two sides, pointing at the location of the base camp of Hestia's spawn. In front of the base camp of Hestia's spawn, a large group of adventurers was surrounding it, as if they were planning to surround the base camp of Hestia's spawn. They were holding weapons in their hands, making the atmosphere quite tense. From Noah's position, he could see that in front of the adventurers surrounding the base camp of Hestia's spawn, there were two people. No. It should be said that there was a god and a man. The god was a male god. He had blonde hair that was as bright as the sun. He was very handsome, and even the smile on his face was dazzling. He was very tall, and he wore a laurel crown with green leaves on his head. Next to the male god was a man who wasn't as handsome as the former, but he was also extraordinarily handsome. Led by the god and the man, a group of adventurers with more than 100 members surrounded the base camp of Hestia's spawn. Noah clearly saw it. Those adventurers all had golden arrows and blazing suns engraved on their bodies. Impressively, it was the same as those adventurers that Noah met in the morning at the place of the Mistress of Fertility. Apollo's spawn. Those adventurers were all members of the Apollo's spawn. So, Noah looked at the god and the man in the lead and narrowed his eyes. That is Apollo and Jacinthus, right? Needless to say, there was no other person who could lead so many adventurers of the Apollo's spawn, except for Apollo himself. Apollo's spawn was quite famous in Eulalie. In terms of power, the Apollo spawn was the backbone of all the spawn in Eulalie's spawn. Not to mention the high level of faction power and adventurers, this spawn had many crusades against the floor master of the 17th floor, who was level 4 Goliath. They were much more powerful than the average spawn. Jacinthus was the leader of the Apollo spawn. His title was Beloved of the Sun, and his level had reached level 3. He belonged to the second level of adventurers. The Lord God and the leader are all going to personally lead the team? Noah rubbed his eyebrows. Sure enough, trouble has come to the door. When Noah was a little annoyed, the door of the base camp of Hestia's spawn was opened. Hestia, who came out of the house, was startled by the big battle in front of her, and then her face became serious. Apparently, she also realized the seriousness of the matter. However, Hestia was still a god, and she couldn't be scared by such a battle in front of her. After she became serious, she looked at Apollo. Apollo, what the hell are you doing? Good afternoon, Hestia. Ignoring Hestia's stare, Apollo politely greeted her, and then said with a dazzling smile. I'm sorry, Hestia. Although we have a close relationship, this matter is really intolerable, so I can only do this. Please forgive me. Who has a close relationship with you? Hestia seemed to have goosebumps all over her body, and her face was full of disgust. I'm warning you, Apollo, I'm a god respected as the virgin goddess. If you intend to tarnish my reputation, I have the right to go to the guild and report you. Oh, I'm really sorry, I take back what I just said. Apollo pressed his chest as if he was a little sad. However, no matter how one looked at it, it was more like a show. The reason was that people who were really sad wouldn't hide a faint smile in their eyes. Furthermore, that smile was clearly filled with malicious intentions. Hestia had a bad premonition when she found out that he had bad intentions. I'll be frank here, Hestia. At this time, Apollo's face once again had a dazzling smile like the sun, and he said such a sentence in front of everyone present. I hope you can hand over your child, Noah Dole. Chapter 891. I hope you can hand over your child, Noah Doria. When these words echoed from Apollo's mouth, everyone except the onlookers fell into an indescribable silence. That bastard gossip god, looking carefully, the gods who came to join in the fun were hiding in the surrounding buildings or on top of them. Many of them began to gnash their teeth as they looked down at Apollo, who was in front of the headquarters of Hestia's family. It should be noted that Apollo wasn't the only one who had taken a fancy to Noah. Almost all of these gods also had designs on Noah, but they weren't as brazen as Apollo. You. Hestia's eyes widened as she spoke without hesitation. Why? Why should I? Apollo smiled confidently. Just because of your child, my child is seriously injured. After saying this, Apollo waved to the people next to him. There, a group of Apollo's minions carried a few stretchers over. There were people lying on these stretchers one after another. Moreover, all of them were screaming in pain. Their bodies were tightly wrapped in bandages, and only their eyes and faces were exposed. Looking at the people who were tightly wrapped in bandages and still lying on the stretchers and screaming in pain, Noah narrowed his eyes in the crowd. Because those people were the adventurers of Apollo's family who were looking for trouble with Noah and the Mistress of Plenty. However, Noah didn't remember beating them up like this. Or rather, apart from the orc adventurer who was drenched in wine, all the other adventurers of Apollo's spawn were left in the same state they were in when they entered the Mistress of Plenty. Since when were they injured by anyone? Moreover, anyone with a discerning eye could tell. Those guys lying on the stretchers were screaming miserably, but they were rolling around and fighting so vigorously. They didn't look like they were seriously injured at all. In other words, those guys were all just putting on a show. Look at them, my poor children. They were beaten up by your children. My heart is broken, Apollo said sadly as he covered his chest with his hand. Hestia, tell me, how could you do that to your child? You're lying. How could Noah beat people up for no reason? Hestia was so angry that she trembled. And, are you looking down on me? I'm a god after all. Do you think I can't see that your children are all acting? The gods in the surrounding buildings nodded in agreement. For these gods who had lived for God knows how many years, the tricks of the people in the lower realm were too naive. It didn't take much effort for them to see through all of it. This was especially true when it came to lying and acting. It was impossible that Apollo didn't know this. However, he still had an innocent look on his face. Hestia, I know it's our instinct to cover up for our children, but sometimes, when our children do something wrong, we have to take responsibility. Only then can our children grow up. In a single sentence, he took Hestia's words as an attempt to cover up for Noah. However, apart from the gods, not many of the onlookers could tell that the minions of Apollo were putting on an act. They immediately believed Apollo's words and started whispering to each other. Hestia was so angry that her face turned red. However, Hestia knew what kind of god Apollo was. No matter what she did, this god would be very despicable and unreasonable. Even though his behavior was very elegant, his actions were enough to be called shameless. This was the god known as Apollo. Seeing Hestia's extremely angry and helpless expression, Noah knew that he couldn't hide anymore. At that moment, Noah directly separated the crowd and walked into the encirclement of the adventurers of Apollo's spawn. Noah's action naturally attracted the attention of everyone present. Seeing Noah slowly walking out of the crowd, Hestia's face lit up. The surrounding adventurers looked at each other in confusion. The onlookers were in an uproar. The gods hiding in the buildings were excited and shouted, "Here comes the climax." In addition to these gods and people, Apollo and Jacinthus who were standing in front of the adventurers of Apollo's family had a different reaction. Jacinthus' face turned cold, and his eyes were full of hostility and malice when he looked at Noah. There was even a hint of jealousy in his eyes, as if he was jealous of something. A disgusting and obscene smile appeared on Apollo's face, and the gaze he looked at Noah became extremely hot, as if he wanted to eat Noah. It was very explicit. "Ah, lovely child, you finally appeared." Being stared at by Apollo with such a hot gaze, Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped. Noah had encountered this kind of scorching gaze more than once since he came to this world. And those gazes all came from Freya. At this time, Apollo's gaze was exactly the same as Freya's. In other words, this god was the same as the beautiful goddess, and they both had the same feelings of love for Noah. The difference was that when Freya looked at Noah, there was a possessiveness that was proportional to the love in her eyes. And Apollo's gaze towards Noah was directly proportional to the love, evil lust. The most important difference was that Freya was at least a woman. But Apollo was a man. A man actually used such a vulgar gaze to look at another man? Noah did not know what others were thinking. Noah only knew that if Freya's gaze only made him feel uncomfortable, then Apollo's gaze made Noah really angry. Without any hesitation, Noah turned his head, met Apollo's hot gaze, and said such a sentence. "If you look at me like that again, believe it or not, I will gouge your eyeballs out." Such an extremely calm sentence seemed to bring a chill to the entire world, causing all the gods and humans present to feel a chill in their hearts and tremble. The smile on Apollo's face was completely frozen. As for Jacinthus, who had been standing beside Apollo, he suddenly raised his eyes, stared at Noah, and said coldly, "Take back what you just said." Hearing this, Noah glanced at Jacinthus and spat out a word. "Get lost." Jacinthus's negative feelings towards Noah were successfully ignited. Clang! Without any hesitation, Jacinthus pulled out the sword at his waist. It was a wavy sword with a body that undulated up and down like a wave. Holding the wavy sword in his hand, Jacinthus stomped on the ground, and the long sword vibrated, creating a sharp gust of wind. The tip of the sword carried a cold arc of light, and Jacinthus's whole body shot out. Almost in the blink of an eye, Jacinthus arrived in front of Noah. "Noah!" Hastia's face turned pale with fright. Not only Hastia, but all the gods and mortals who were watching from the side were also shocked. Amidst the exclamations, Jacinto's sharp sword tip suddenly shot out and pierced towards Noah's throat. It was clear that Jacinthus intended to kill Noah on the spot. Just as everyone was waiting for the bloody scene to appear, the tip of the sword that was less than 1 centimeter away from Noah's throat suddenly stopped as if it was frozen in space. This was because a hand tightly grasped Jacinthus's hand that was holding the sword, and this extremely fierce blow was forcibly stopped. Jacinthus's face had already changed. Noah slowly raised his eyes and looked at Jacinthus. "It seems that you want me to help you get the hell out of here." After saying this, Noah's foot suddenly moved, and one of his legs suddenly turned into a blurry whip shadow in an instant. With a sharp and ear-piercing sound, it violently swung towards Jacinthus, whose pupils suddenly contracted. Bang! Before everyone around realized what the current situation was, a heavy muffled sound exploded from the field. Chapter 892. Bang! Along with such a muffled sound, a figure suddenly shot out from the center of the field surrounded by the adventurers of Apollo's spawn. Like a kite with a broken string, the figure flew over the crowd above the heads of the adventurers. Bang! Another muffled sound rang out as the figure smashed heavily into the wall of a building, causing cracks to appear on the sturdy wall. Poochie! Soon after, a mouthful of bright red blood was violently spat out from the other party's mouth. His body leaned against the wall and slowly slid down, landing on the ground. Before everyone could react, they subconsciously turned their gazes to the figure that was shot out, smashed into the wall, and slid to the ground. When they saw the full appearance of the figure, everyone fell into a deathly silence. There was still a shoe print on Jacinto's chest, and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. He was lying on the ground with his back facing the sky. He raised his head with difficulty and looked at Noah, who didn't even move a step. His handsome face was distorted with hatred. You seeing Jacinto's being defeated by a single blow, not to mention the crowd, even the adventurers of Apollo's clan were stunned and lost their voices. Jacinto's was a level 2 adventurer at LV3. An adventurer of this level was already considered a big shot in the eyes of the crowd. For the adventurers of Apollo's clan who regarded Jacinto's as their leader, it was easy to imagine the impact of their leader being defeated by a single blow. Therefore, when Jacinto's targeted Noah with a voice full of hatred, Apollo was the first to react. "You dare to openly attack a member of my clan?" Apollo stared at Noah with a smile on his face. "Aren't you afraid that the guild will ban Hestia's clan?" Although there would be conflicts if there were factions, on the surface, the guild absolutely forbade the creation of conflicts between clan members. After all, there were not only people who received the grace of God in Eulalia, but there were also ordinary people. If the members of the clan tribe, who could destroy a building with a single magic spell and cause a huge loss, were allowed to do as they pleased, then the safety of ordinary citizens would not be guaranteed. Therefore, the guild absolutely forbade the battle between the spawns. Once violated, they would be punished according to the situation. Apollo probably wanted to use this to threaten Noah, right? Unfortunately, Noah didn't know how many times he had seen this kind of trick. It is said that people's eyes can be blurred, but can God's eyes also be blurred? Noah curled his lips. "I'm just asking, just now, how many people here saw me or that idiot who attacked first? Please answer me." The smile on Apollo's face froze. Lying on the ground, Jacinthus, who had been struggling to get up, looked at Noah angrily. The surrounding onlookers looked at each other and began to whisper. "There are so many people here who can testify that it was that idiot who suddenly attacked me, and I was just defending myself." Noah looked at Apollo with a trace of sarcasm in his eyes. "Undoubtedly, you are a god. It's okay if you don't have a good method, but if your eyes are blurred, then your billions of years of life are probably really wasted." Noah's merciless words made the surrounding onlookers all make an uproar. Even Apollo was stunned and didn't react at all. That was natural. Even if he came to the lower realm and lived like an ordinary person, Apollo was still a god who was respected by the people in the lower realm. Such a god was actually despised by Noah in front of so many people. Who wouldn't feel shocked? However, Noah's words weren't finished yet. "Also, you purposely sent your men to the hotel to cause trouble for me. That was your trick too, wasn't it?" Noah glanced at the adventurers lying on the stretchers. "First let us have a conflict, then slander me in this way. Although this method is ordinary, it is quite effective." With such a sentence, Noah raised a hand. "Unfortunately, I don't buy it." After that, golden ripples suddenly fluctuated in the space around Noah's body, like water waves, imprinted in the space. Then, under everyone's gaze, a variety of luxurious weapons such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on emerged one by one from the golden ripples. "Hey, guys over there." As if controlling the space, Noah, who was standing in front of the golden ripples, glanced at the adventurers lying on the stretchers who were looking at him with dull eyes and suddenly smiled. "If you don't dodge, you'll die." It was as if he wanted to confirm the truth of Noah's words. In the next moment, the sharp weapons that emerged from the golden ripples suddenly vibrated, and like golden water droplets, they burst out and shrouded the direction of the stretchers. If those who have seen Noah's Gate of Babylon fighting style were here, they would definitely notice. This time, the speed of the noble phantoms launched from Noah's Gate of Babylon was frighteningly slow. Even the adventurers of the Apollo clan, who were wrapped in bandages and lying on stretchers, could clearly see the sharp weapons that were shooting towards them like raindrops. Woo 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 woo. All of a sudden, the adventurers of Apollo's minions who were lying on the stretchers with their bodies wrapped in bandages screamed in fear. Without any hesitation, they jumped up and dodged in a panic. Clang 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 clang. As a result, the treasures that shot out landed on the empty stretchers one by one. Amidst the sounds of metal clashing against the ground, the treasures pierced through the stretchers one by one, riddling them with holes. The entire place once again returned to its deathly silent state. The onlookers were speechless as they watched the adventurers of Apollo's minions run away. Their bodies were wrapped in bandages, but their movements were faster than anything else. Apollo's face changed, and he secretly shouted in his heart. What? Aren't you full of vigor? Noah lowered his raised hand. When the golden ripples and the noble phantoms disappeared, he looked at Apollo and sneered. If this is considered a serious injury, then there is probably no one who will die in this world. It seems that the famous god Apollo really dotes on his children. Even if they are not sick or in pain, he can't wait for them to lie down every day. Don't mess around outside. I can only say that I'm impressed. You. Apollo's handsome face turned pale, but he couldn't utter a single word. The truth was right in front of him, so what else could he say? However, after a while, Apollo seemed to have thought it through. He took a deep breath and revealed a dazzling smile. No wonder you're so obsessed with Goddess Freya. You can even resist her charm. You're really outstanding. When I saw your performance at Freya's family banquet that day, I was attracted by your excellence. Adorable child, do you really not want to consider coming to my side? The one who answered Apollo's question was not Noah, but Hestia. Don't even think about it. Hestia hugged Noah and looked at Apollo with an evil expression. Even if I give Noah to anyone, I won't give him to you, a pervert who doesn't reject anyone. Is that so? Apollo's smile did not change. But this time, it's not up to you. As soon as he finished speaking, the adventurers of Apollo's family suddenly separated and pressed a person forward. That person was tied up by the adventurers of Apollo's family. His mouth was gagged and he was pushed in front of everyone. Seeing this person, Hestia cried out in surprise. Baal? Chapter 893. Woo. 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 Baal, who was tied up by Apollo's minions, kept whimpering unwillingly through the cloth stuffed in his mouth. His body was also struggling. Behave yourself. The two members of Apollo's spawn who had brought Baal with his hands tied behind his back shouted angrily. One of them even kicked Baal, causing him to fall to the ground. Baal's body wasn't unscathed. Instead, there were bruises all over his body. Obviously, Baal had tried to resist, but was met with violence. Perhaps, the members of Apollo's minions had planned to kidnap Baal. When they received the news that Noah and Baal had parted ways, they immediately arranged for people to capture Baal when he was about to enter the dungeon in the morning. Needless to say, Baal had just received Hestia's favor for less than a month. In addition, he was only at LV1, so it was impossible for him to be a match for the adventurers of Apollo's minions. Hestia's beautiful face finally showed true anger. Apollo. I'm sorry, Hestia. Your child is weak and timid, but he is surprisingly tough. In order to catch him, we have to be a little rough with him, Apollo shrugged and said with a smile that was as bright as the sun. Everything is for the sake of getting a cute child. You should understand. It's not good to monopolize such a cute child, Hestia. You. Hestia immediately understood what Apollo meant. Are you trying to threaten us with Baal? I have no choice. It's all because I have no choice. Apollo's bright smile looked extremely ugly under his despicable behavior. As long as you give me this child called Noah, I'll return this child to you. What do you think? Hestia bit her lips and looked at Apollo with disgust, anger, and hatred. After realizing that he was used as a bargaining chip to threaten his family, Baal's face was filled with remorse. He struggled even more violently, and tears of humiliation flowed from his eyes. Enraged by Baal's desperate struggle, the two adventurers from Apollo's spawn smacked their lips. Didn't I tell you to behave yourself? Suddenly, the two adventurers raised one foot at the same time, intending to kick Baal. Baal was shocked. He quickly closed his eyes and braced himself for the coming pain. Bang! In the next instant, a muffled sound rang out. Goo! A muffled groan was heard as well. No. It was not a single sound. Instead, it was two groans that overlapped each other. Immediately afterward, the two adventurers from Apollo's clan who pushed Bel over followed the same fate as Yakintos. They were shot backward like bullets and smashed into the walls of the surrounding buildings. Their heads tilted to one side, and they passed out. Bel, who did not feel the pain he imagined, opened his eyes with palpitations. Then, Bel realized that the two adventurers from Apollo's clan who pushed him down had disappeared. His body suddenly floated in the air, and when he landed on the ground again, his position had changed. Bel is no longer surrounded by Apollo's minions. Instead, he has arrived beside Hestia at an unknown time. Bel? Hestia was startled. What? Apollo and the people around him were all shocked. What's going on? The gods who were hiding in the buildings all opened their eyes wide. They looked surprised. In the eyes of these people, Bel was about to face the violent confrontation between the two adventurers of Apollo's spawn, but in the next second, the two adventurers of Apollo's spawn were sent flying. At the same time, Bel inexplicably moved from Apollo's side to Hestia's side as if he had teleported. Everything happened in an extremely baffling manner. Only Noah was half kneeling on the ground. He slowly untied the rope on Bel's body and removed the cloth from Bel's mouth. How are you? Are you okay? Leader? Bel didn't know how to react. He was at a loss for a moment. I have a good rest. Noah smiled, stood up, and turned around to face Apollo. Apollo couldn't help but take a step back when he saw Noah's eyes. This was because Apollo could see it clearly. In Noah's deep and dark eyes, all the emotions had disappeared. The only thing that remained was the calm before the storm, a calmness that made one's heart tremble. Hestia, Noah suddenly said. The guild does have a rule that spawn shouldn't have a direct conflict with each other, right? Huh? Hestia didn't react to the sudden change in the situation. She was startled by Noah's question, but she still answered subconsciously. Yes. Yes. But when the conflict reaches a certain level, and the two sides can't stop the fight, what should we do? Noah asked in a voice that was so calm that it was chilling. Is there no reasonable way to resolve the conflict between the two sides? Hestia was silent when she heard Noah's question. But after a while, Hestia said with a bitter smile, "Don't worry. Although I don't know if it's a way to resolve the conflict, there is a game that allows both sides to fight legally." A game? Noah asked directly. What kind of game? A war game, Hestia answered Noah's question with a serious tone. It's a kind of game where you apply to the guild, let the gods be witnesses, and let the two main gods who decide the battle set the rules, let the members of the clan fight, and the god who wins can control the life and death of the defeated party, and can make any request. Is that so? Noah suddenly smiled. That couldn't be better. Apollo already had a bad feeling when Noah asked Hestia the question as if there was no one else around. Now that he saw Noah's emotionless smile, the bad feeling in Apollo's heart became even stronger. Apollo's lips trembled as he asked. What? What do you want to do? If your eyes and morals are bad, then don't let your ears be bad as well. Noah looked around at all the members of Apollo's family. Finally, his gaze stopped on Apollo. Didn't you hear it just now? Could it be? Apollo was stunned. You want to, let's have a war game. Noah's voice echoed clearly in the surroundings. A war game between Hestia's spawn and Apollo's spawn. The surrounding crowd burst into an uproar when they heard Noah's words. From the buildings, the gods all came out and shouted excitedly. Good. It's finally here. It's a war game. Hurry up and agree. Apollo. Hurry up and agree. For those gods who loved entertainment, a war game between two spawns was like a popular competition. It was natural that they would be happy to see it. Are you sure? Apollo's face twitched and he forced a smile. No matter how strong you are, there are only two people in your spawn. My spawn is hundreds of times more than yours. Are you sure you want to play a war game? Noah did not answer Apollo's question. Instead, he glanced at the members of Apollo's family. Trash like this, no matter how many of you come, it will be a waste. With just one sentence, he successfully infuriated all of Apollo's minions, as well as Apollo himself. Okay. Apollo replied loudly. I'll accept your suggestion of a war game. All the gods who had been waiting for this moment cheered loudly. Even the onlookers in the surroundings were excited and started to shout loudly. From the beginning to the end, Hestia did not make any reaction. It was as if she had known Noah's plan when he asked her the question. She just looked at Noah. There was no blame in her eyes, only trust. Noah smiled from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 894. Hiss. In the base camp of Hestia's clan, Baal, who was supported by Noah, immediately let out a painful groan as soon as he sat on the sofa. Although he did not suffer any serious injuries, Baal's body was covered with bruises. It was obvious that he had been beaten up by Apollo's minions. That bastard Apollo, seeing her own clan members being beaten up like this, Hestia was like a mother and flew into a rage. I should have known that guy would not hesitate to use any means in order to dig Noah into his clan. That pervert has always been like this. Has it always been like this? Noah turned his head and looked at Hestia. Does that disgusting god always do this kind of thing? Don't you know? Hestia's pretty face was filled with extreme disgust. More than 80% of that Prince Charming's family members were chased by him using all kinds of methods and shameless methods of pestering. Pursued? Noah was stunned and said with some uncertainty. Did you just say pursued? Yes. Hestia's face was full of displeasure, as if she had swallowed something disgusting. Apollo is famous for being an affectionate Prince Charming, and he doesn't reject anyone. No matter if it's a man or a woman, as long as he has his eyes on someone, he will get them. The gods even gave him a name, Love of Sorrow. That guy's willingness to reject anyone has reached a level that is incomprehensible to people. Hearing Hestia's words, Noah was speechless. At first, when Apollo looked at Noah with such a burning gaze, Noah thought that it was because he had taken a fancy to his abilities. Like the other gods, Apollo wanted to poach him into the family tribe and use him for himself. However, from Hestia's words, although he did not want to think so, Noah had to be sure that the disgusting god really treated him with the same feelings as Freya. No matter if it was a man or a woman, as long as Apollo had his eyes on someone, he would woo them. After thinking about it carefully, Noah also felt that most of the members of Apollo's minions were indeed good-looking men and women. Even Jacinthus was extraordinarily handsome. It seemed that those guys were all Apollo's playthings. A god who crossed the boundary of gender and was known for his love. That was why the other gods called Apollo the god of gossip. That was why Hestia called Apollo a pervert. It seems that Apollo was also present at Freya's banquet last time. He also saw the confrontation between you and Orly's ultimate weapon, and because of that, he fell in love with you. Hestia's expression as if she had chewed a piece of wax, and said something that made her feel a little nauseous. Undoubtedly, he knew that Freya had her eyes on you, but he still dared to use such a blatant method to get you. Isn't he afraid that the beauty will go crazy and be destroyed by Freya's minions? He's crazy. Although Apollo's minions were considered the backbone of Orly's forces, Freya's minions were truly one of Orly's most powerful minions. In a situation where even their leader was only LV3, if Freya's minions were to attack, they could destroy Apollo's minions in minutes. Knowing that Noah had been chosen by Freya, Apollo still dared to use such a method to force Noah. If something went wrong, Freya might really be angry and destroy Apollo's minions. Although, for Noah, Freya, who used the method of charm to deal with him on their first meeting, was not a goddess that could make him like her. Did Apollo use similar methods to snatch the people in Apollo's minions? Noah recalled Jacinthus's jealous gaze. What about the leader of Apollo's minions? Is he also one of them? The child named Jacinthus? Hestia shook her head. That child's love for Apollo came from the bottom of her heart. In other words, that Jacinthus is also a guy with an abnormal sexual orientation? Noah narrowed his eyes. Such a disgusting minions, it's better to make them disappear. In fact, if it wasn't for the guild's prohibition of direct conflict between the minions, Noah would have already made things difficult. The way Apollo looked at Noah really made Noah feel disgusted. In addition, in order to poach Noah into the minions, that disgusting god also kidnapped and injured the people around Noah. This had already crossed Noah's bottom line. If he didn't do it casually, not only himself, but also Baal and Hestia's minions would be banned by the guild. Noah would never bring up something as troublesome as a war game. Lord God, leader, I'm really sorry. Baal's face was gloomy. It's all because of me that this happened. You're wrong, Baal. Noah patted Baal's shoulder. The fault is definitely not with anyone other than that pervert. You have no reason to be blamed. If there's a reason, the only reason would be me. No matter what, Apollo attacked you because of me. But, what should we do? Baal's face was uneasy. Do we really have to play a war game? Baal's heart was full of worries. After all, compared to Apollo's minions, Hestia's minions with only 2 members were too small. Even if Noah's strength was outstanding, Baal didn't know if he could win against so many opponents. Hestia also had the same opinion on this point. The format of the war game hasn't been decided yet. If it's something like occupying the enemy's territory within a certain period of time, then even if Noah is strong enough to rival Eulalia's ultimate weapon, it's basically impossible for him to win. After all, if it was a war game like this, then unless Noah didn't walk out of the territory and occupy the enemy's territory, the enemy could directly send members with strong stealth abilities to occupy the territory when Noah left and win. And if Noah didn't step out of his base and continue to defend his base, Noah wouldn't be able to win as he had no way of occupying the enemy's base. This was the so-called war game. There were many ways to determine the outcome of the war game. It was also because of this that Apollo dared to agree to play a war game even though he knew that Noah was comparable to a LV-7 warrior. However, if the war game was a one-on-one battle, then there was no doubt that Noah would win. There was no doubt about it. In other words, if there were not enough members, Noah and Apollo's chances of winning were almost the same. It all depended on what kind of war game would be played in the end. Of course, Hestia did not know that Noah had the authority to deal with almost any situation and the Gate of Babylon, which contained all kinds of treasures and items. No matter what the situation was, Noah was confident that he could win. Baal, Noah suddenly said. On the day of the war game, I will fight alone. You stay by Hestia's side. Huh? Baal was shocked and quickly said. How can that be? How can I watch you fight alone? Hestia frowned, but she didn't say anything. She chose to believe in Noah. In response, Noah just smiled at Hestia and then said to Baal, I have my own considerations. I have my own considerations. So, Baal, stay by Hestia's side and protect her. Who knows what kind of underhanded tricks Apollo will use? That should be impossible, Hestia said. To put it bluntly, the war game is just a proxy war between the gods. For the gods, it's just like a competition, a form of entertainment. If Apollo really intends to use any underhanded means that will affect the outcome of the game, he will definitely become the enemy of all of Eulalia's spawns. If that's the case, then Apollo is really courting death. It's better to be safe than sorry, Noah said. In short, you just need to trust me. Hestia and Baal looked at each other and nodded helplessly. Chapter 895. Tap, 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 tap. In a luxurious corridor that was as white as a temple, Hestia, who was wearing a formal dress, walked forward with a serious expression on her face. Her footsteps echoed clearly in the surroundings like a melodious song, with a rhythmic sound. Hestia. After a while, a very mature female voice called out to Hestia. Hestia stopped and turned around to look behind her. Over there, a tall and slender goddess was also wearing a formal dress. She slowly walked towards Hestia. Seeing the tall and slender goddess, Hestia's tense face slightly relaxed. Hephaestus, she was none other than Hephaestus, the one who had taken Hestia in for quite some time. She was Hestia's best friend and had the nickname of the god of forging, Hephaestus. It had been more than a month since he said goodbye to Hephaestus in the house of Hephaestus's family. In the past month, Hestia hadn't gone to see Hephaestus. So, Hestia and Hephaestus hadn't seen each other since she formed her clan with Noah. After all, a month's time was simply too short for a god who had lived for billions of years and whose life was eternal. Hestia and Hephaestus hadn't seen each other for such a short period of time, so it wasn't enough to make them miss each other. However, Hephaestus wasn't very nice to Hestia. I didn't expect that in less than 2 months after the formation of your clan, you would dare to fight with the backbone of Apollo's clan. You're quite capable, aren't you? If you want to complain, complain to Apollo. Hestia's face was full of displeasure. Who knows what that pervert is thinking all day long? He suddenly came to find trouble with me. I only know that he has his eyes on my closest child. For him, even if Freya and Loki's clan comes, I won't admit defeat easily, let alone the Backbone clan. In fact, didn't Freya already have her eyes on Noah? Loki seems to have been thinking about him too, right? Hephaestus sighed. You really don't go a day without trouble. Didn't I tell you? Hestia turned her head and continued walking forward. If you want to complain, complain to those guys. Well, it's not your fault, Hephaestus said with a wry smile as she followed Hestia forward. Let me say this first. I won't be able to help you much during the meeting. Those gods have been yearning for entertainment for a long time, and none of them will let go of this opportunity. My words won't be of any help to you. Hestia nodded with a heavy heart. The so-called meeting of the gods was actually a gathering organized by a group of gods to relieve boredom. This kind of gathering would be held once in a while, and the interval was usually 3 months. At the gods' meeting that was held once every 3 months, the gods would have a casual chat. They would also exchange the latest information and inquiries from all over the world. At the same time, they would also exchange opinions on various aspects regarding the problems between the gods' families. It could be said that there was a variety of things to be said. Awarding titles to the senior adventurers who had reached LV2 was also part of the meeting. Therefore, although Noah had reached LV2, if he wanted to get a title, he would have to wait until the meeting that was held once every 3 months. Today, the meeting for the war game between Hestia's clan and Apollo's clan began in advance. In this meeting, the gods would be the witnesses and witness the discussion between Hestia and Apollo on the topic of war games. The form of the war game would be decided in the meeting, and the form of the war game would be decided in the meeting. The meeting place of the meeting was on the 30th floor of the Tower of Babel, which was located in the center of Olali. It was a floor that looked like a temple in the sky. Hestia and Hephaestus walked through the corridor together and entered a very spacious hall. In this hall, there was no furniture except for an oversized round table. Around the round table, gods of all shapes and sizes sat at fixed intervals. Apollo, who was sitting at the head of the table, had been looking in the direction of the entrance. When he saw Hestia, he immediately showed a sunny smile. You're finally here, Hestia. Hestia's face immediately darkened. Hestia's disgust for Apollo, who wanted to steal Noah by using underhanded means, had already reached its peak. On the contrary, the gods who were watching the fun were very enthusiastic. Oh, the lowly goddess is also here. Then, can we start the discussion about the war game? Hurry up. I can't wait to see the fun. Hey, don't say what's on your mind. It should be serious here. Hestia and Hephaestus sat down in silence under the laughter of the gods who wanted to make a bigger fuss out of this matter. Let's make it clear first, Apollo said directly. If I win, I only want Noah Dole. You're so direct. Hestia did not hide her astonishment at all. Undoubtedly, you've been taught a lesson by Noah, and you're still thinking about him? Noah had not only exposed Apollo's underhanded means one by one in front of all the gods and people of Olali, but he had also degraded Apollo in public. If it were any other god with a stronger sense of self-esteem, they would have long exploded in anger and wanted to teach Noah a lesson. However, Apollo did not change his mind. He did not even seem to mind at all. You don't understand, Hestia. The more difficult it is to get something, the more precious it is. The more naughty the child is, the cuter it is. I've seen the rebellious child many times. It's nothing. After all, many of Apollo's family members had been pursued by Apollo using all kinds of pestering methods. Those people must have also tried to resist. Therefore, Apollo had long been used to the resistance of the people he liked. Among the gods present, there was one who agreed with Apollo's point of view. Indeed, that child is different from ordinary children. It's not easy to get him, so he's especially precious. The silver-haired goddess was sitting in a corner, but she was unable to conceal her radiance. She constantly attracted the gazes of the male idols around her, causing many of them to reveal infatuated expressions. She held a glass of red wine and took a small sip. While saying such a sentence as if she was intoxicated, she glanced at Apollo and smiled sweetly. For such a cute child, you can't let others have him, right? Apollo? The corner of Apollo's eye twitched when he heard Freya's words. Of course, Apollo knew what Freya meant. Naturally, Apollo also knew what kind of god Freya was. This goddess was very different from Apollo in nature, but they were both very affectionate gods. Moreover, Freya and Apollo were very similar in that once they had set their eyes on someone, they would pursue him no matter what. The difference was that Apollo's methods would be unworthy of his status as a god, while Freya's methods were sometimes extreme, but she would never do anything that went against her status. If Apollo was compared to a businessman who valued profit above all else, then Freya was a true queen. She could be domineering, strong, and cruel, but she would never give up her self-esteem. This was the biggest difference between Apollo and Freya. In addition, Freya's minions not only had Eulalia's ultimate weapon, but also one of the most powerful minions, in the truest sense of the word. To be honest, Apollo had hesitated for a long time to snatch Freya's child. In the end, he chose to be a moth to a flame. The so-called gods were just that unreasonable. Sometimes it was a small reason, sometimes it was an insignificant thought, but because of this, they would do anything to satisfy a group of transcendental existences. This was how gods were. Enough, listening to the two of you talk about your love for the child in every sense of the word makes me feel uncomfortable. Loki was also present, and he spoke with a displeased expression. Hurry up and decide on the format of the war game. All the gods agreed one after another, and Hestia and Apollo both nodded. The meeting of the gods began. Chapter 896. I propose that the war game be a one-on-one duel, and the two of us will choose a member of our clan to decide the winner. What do you think? As soon as the meeting started, Hestia did not hesitate to put forward her idea, and even incited the gods around her. A one-on-one duel between children is the most exciting. You should also want to see it, right? Hearing Hestia's words, many of the gods nodded repeatedly. That's right, that's right. A duel is the most exciting. Letting Apollo's child gang up on a person or something like that will only spoil the fun. I also support this idea. Many of the gods expressed their approval, and they were all laughing. They were simply a bunch of guys who wanted to see the world in chaos. Of course, these gods did want to see the world in chaos. As long as it could bring them entertainment and excitement, no matter what it was, they would not hesitate to agree to it. Therefore, Hestia's speech in the aspect of entertainment and excitement would definitely be met with the gods who were eager for these things. If that's the case, then a duel without suspense would be even more boring, right? Apollo snorted and retorted without hesitation. That day, at the banquet, you all saw it. Although I don't know what extremely rare skill or magic was used, the child who was at most LV2 was indeed able to contend against Orly's ultimate weapon for a short period of time. If it was a one-on-one duel, even the best child in my clan would be defeated in an instant. You all saw the situation on the street that day. That's not interesting at all, right? Hearing this, the gods around seemed to have just remembered this matter and nodded one after another. That's true. A one-on-one duel is not interesting at all. If it was a one-on-one duel, the child in Apollo's clan would definitely be defeated in an instant. If the high-ranking children from Freya's clan and Loki's clan come out, it will be very exciting. That's right. Why don't we let Freya and Loki's clan and the child play a war game? That's a good idea. As they chatted, the topic was diverted by the excited gods to their grandma's home. In any case, I'm definitely against a one-on-one duel. Apollo pulled the topic back. Since this is a war game between the family clan and the family clan, then we should throw in the members of the two family clan. I suggest that we let the two family clan engage in a strategic battle for the position. Whoever grabs the position first will be considered the winner. What do you think? How is that possible? Hestia slammed the table and stood up. Then wouldn't it be impossible for my clan tribe to win? We're the same, aren't we? Apollo shrugged. If it was a one-on-one battle, wouldn't it be impossible for my clan tribe to win? It's your fault for not having a master in your clan, Hestia said, a little annoyed. Who's to blame for not being able to bring out the full potential of your child? If that's the case, then I can also say that it's your fault for having so few people in your clan. Apollo retorted without backing down. Who can you blame for not having the ability to get more children to follow you? You, all right. You're so annoying. Loki slammed the table, his face full of impatience. Let's have all the gods here write down their own ideas. Then, we'll draw lots to decide. Loki's suggestion was approved by all the gods present. Hestia and Apollo could only shut their mouths in the face of such a fair proposal and nodded in agreement. After a while, a box was placed in the middle of the round table, and each god placed a piece of parchment on the table in front of them. Then, each god wrote down their own ideas on the parchment and began to collect the parchments. After rolling them into balls, they threw them into the box. Hestia wrote the words, duel, on her own piece of paper. Naturally, Apollo wrote the words, positional warfare, on his own piece of paper and put them into the box one by one. When the lot was ready, Loki stood up. Let me do it. Both Hestia and Apollo raised their eyebrows upon hearing this. You want to do it? Hestia looked at Loki suspiciously. You're not siding with Apollo, are you? After all, the relationship between Hestia and Loki was bad. Every god knew about it. Goddess Loki, you're not siding with Hestia's family, are you? Apollo asked with a fake smile. Everyone knows that you also want that child to join your family. Loki glared fiercely at Hestia and Apollo. Don't worry, I hate both of you equally, so I won't be siding with either one of you. After that, Loki ignored all the gods present and began to flip through the parchments in the box. All the gods present held their breaths. Under the watchful eyes of all the gods, Loki took out a piece of parchment from the box. After glancing at the contents, he smacked his lips and threw the parchment on the table. On the crumpled parchment, there were 3 words written clearly. Siege War. Hestia's childish but cute face immediately darkened. Ha 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 ha. Apollo laughed out loud. He was very proud of himself. This is a sacred and fair decision of drawing lots. Hestia. You can't go against it. Although there was no positional battle, which Apollo wanted to see the most, it was still very advantageous for Apollo if it was a siege war. After all, in a siege war, whether it was attacking or defending, it required a large number of soldiers. In this regard, Apollo had a big advantage. How about this? Hestia's family will be the one to attack, Apollo said with a happy smile. No matter what, a family with only 2 people can't defend the city, right? Hestia bit her lip, but she could only accept the result. Since the method has been decided, let's decide on the date. Rocky announced in a businesslike manner without any mercy. We've already completed the guild's application, and will inform them of the details. Considering that the guild still needs to prepare a site for the city, we estimate that it'll take at least 3 days. Hence, we've decided to set the official date for 3 days from now. No objections. No objections. No objections. Of course, no objections. One by one, the gods voiced their opinions. When Freya, who had been drinking wine in silence, said something, she slowly put down the wine glass in her hand on the table, her smile never changing. No objections. Everyone agreed. Has tea, Apollo said with a smile on his face. In these 3 days, you have to help me take care of that child. Hestia just snorted, got up, and walked out without hesitation. Hephaestus had no choice but to follow her. After Hestia and Hephaestus left, the gods in the room started to leave as well. Loki, who was still sitting in his seat, ignored Apollo who was walking out and spoke to another goddess who was also sitting in her seat. Are you just going to watch that pervert touch the girl you like? Then what about you? Freya's expression changed as she asked. Don't you like that child very much? I only like his talent, but you like the child himself, don't you? Loki curled his lips. That's the object of your affection, and you just watch someone else get him? That's not your style. You said it yourself, it's only under the condition that someone else gets him. Freya raised her wine glass and looked at the dark red liquid in the glass. Her face curved into a seductive smile. How could a guy like Apollo get his hands on a child who could resist my charm and drive me crazy? Lucian thought to himself. Loki did not say anything else. This attitude proved that Loki and Freya had the same idea. Those members who haven't even reached LV, for want to fight against the child that even Finn can't see through and Reveria said is very incredible. Loki looked at Apollo's back with pity. How shallow. Chapter 897. Siege Battle. On the other hand, Noah rubbed his chin and smiled after Hasti brought back the war game that was decided by the Gods' Council. That's good. Good? Hestia asked worriedly. That's a siege battle. The enemy will definitely send in a considerable amount of troops. Also, Apollo's spawn will be on the defending side. Can you really take down a city guarded by the elites of Apollo's spawn alone? One had to know that under normal circumstances, sieges were only used when there was no other choice. In order to take down an entire city, one would have to pay a huge price. After all, the attacking side needed a large number of siege weapons such as catapults, siege chariots, ballistas, and so on. They also needed to think of a way to break through the city gate and take down the city. On the other hand, the defending side not only had the absolute advantage, they also had the city as a barrier. A simple rain of arrows could cause a large number of casualties. Therefore, in a siege battle, one would have to prepare 3 times more troops and supplies than the enemy in order to take down the city. Although there was no gunpowder or cannonballs in this world, magic was not any weaker than gunpowder or cannonballs. Its power was even greater than that. So, as the one attacking the city, once Noah came to the bottom of the city, he would be bombarded with unimaginable magic and buried alive, right? In any case, a siege battle was too difficult for Noah. That was what Hestia and Baal thought. Commander, Baal mustered up his courage. Sure enough, let me fight. At least we can have one more person. You are a LV, one newbie adventurer. It's like nothing in a war, Noah declared mercilessly. I'll fight alone. This is something that has been decided. No one is allowed to object. After that, Noah stood up and walked towards the door. Hestia couldn't help but ask. Where are you going? The dungeon, Noah said without looking back. 3 days. I don't have the time to waste playing games with that disgusting god. I don't know how much time I have to improve. Hence, when Noah completely ignored the war game with the Apollonian spawn and entered the buried city for 3 days of training and killing time, the people in Eulalie's world had entered a lively atmosphere as if they were holding a festival. As the news of the upcoming war game between Hestia's clan and Apollo's clan spread out, almost every place was talking about the war game between the 2 clans. Basically, most people thought that Hestia's spawn, which only had 2 members, had no chance of winning against Apollo's spawn, which was hundreds of times more numerous. On the contrary, the gods seemed to be looking forward to an upset. They kept promoting how powerful Noah Doria was. As a result, even the ordinary people in Eulalia began to know that Noah had the strength to contend with LV7, and all of them became noisier. Under such circumstances, Apollo's spawn quietly left Eulalia. Not long ago, the guild had conveyed the location of the war game. Therefore, as the defending side, Apollo's spawn began to set off in advance to prepare in their own city. This time, the war game would take place in a ruin. It was a place built on a plain with no forests, no hills, and a walled city in the middle. Thousands of years ago, before God came to this world, in order to keep the cities and towns behind Eulalia away from the monsters that emerged from the big hole of the underground city without the Tower of Babel as a cover, or to stop them, they built a fortress near Eulalia. Although almost all of these walled cities had turned into ruins today, only this walled city was still more or less in use until a century ago, so it was still intact. This time, the war game chose this walled city as the battlefield. It took a day for 110 people belonging to Apollo's spawn to arrive here. These 110 people were almost all the members of Apollo's spawn that could be used. The rest of the people who didn't come were either support, novice adventurers, or other members who were in charge of clerical work and couldn't play an effective combat role. After arriving here, these people began to busy themselves with the repair work of the city wall, or the storage and allocation of spare weapons, items, food, and so on. It could be said that the preparations were complete. Obviously, even if the situation was very favorable to Apollo, the gods still didn't want to be overturned by unnecessary carelessness. Just like in the beginning, in order to get Noah, Apollo not only prepared to find trouble in the hotel, but also kidnapped Bear. From this point of view, Apollo did have some redeeming qualities. Thus, time gradually passed while Eulalia's gods and humans were bustling with activity, and Apollo's minions were quietly busy. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. It took a whole day to set off from Eulalia to the location of the war game. The guild used 3 days to prepare the site. 1 day was used to prepare for Apollo's spawn, who were the defenders of the city. Therefore, 2 days after the end of the gods' assembly, Apollo's spawn set off. As for the attackers, Hestia's spawn could only set off after 3 days. Plus the 1 day it took to move, the real war game actually took 4 days to start. On this day, Noah left Eulalia early in the morning and went outside. Here, a carriage had been prepared for a long time. Noah didn't even bring any luggage with him. He wore casual clothes and went to the city gate built on the city wall. He stopped in front of the carriage that was responsible for taking him to the war game stage. Hestia and Bear were also here. Seeing Noah stop in front of the carriage, Hestia looked up and looked at Noah. There was no worry in her eyes, only trust. "I'll wait for you here." "Okay." Noah nodded and looked at Bear with a smile. "I'll leave Hestia to you." "Yes." Bear replied loudly. "Good luck, leader." Noah smiled and waved at Hestia and Bear in a carefree manner. Then he got into the carriage. Through the window of the carriage, Noah looked at Belle and Hestia, who were staring at him from the outside, and said calmly, "Don't worry about it. Let's go back. It won't take long." Hestia and Belle seemed to be influenced by Noah's confident words. Their expressions softened a lot. After nodding heavily, they turned around and returned to Eulalia without hesitation. Soon, the wheels of the carriage started to turn slowly. Accompanied by the neighing of the horses, the carriage gradually sped up, gradually moving towards its destination. Looking at the scenery outside the window that was gradually moving backward, Noah let go of the curtains and leaned against the carriage, holding a piece of paper in his hand. On this piece of paper was the information recorded. Noah Dole LV. 2 Strength, SSS, 1307, Durability, SSS, 1310, Dexterity, SSS, 1308, Agility, SSS, 1318, Magic, SSS, 1300, Mystery, Magic, Skill Frowny Face Protection from the World, a permanent skill. It was equivalent to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. There were only 3 days. Within 3 days, Noah had once again upgraded all his ability points to the SSS level. If A's and the others saw Noah's current ability points, they would be more than just surprised. Well, it's better than nothing. Noah opened the curtain and threw the paper out of the window, letting it fly with the wind. Looking at the flying recording paper and the scenery outside the window, Noah's lips curled into a cold arc. Chapter 898. The streets were bustling. Today, Eulalia was several times livelier than usual. As if a festival was about to be held, all the taverns in Eulalia opened early in the morning. On the sides of the streets, in every corner, vendors began to set up their stalls. On the road, pieces of parchment used for propaganda were almost all over the walls of the buildings. They were used to promote the war game between Hestia's family and Apollo's family. It was precisely because of this exaggerated propaganda that Eulalia became as lively as a festival, turning a war game into an entertainment program for the citizens of Eulalia. Needless to say, there was no one else who would do such a thing, except for those gods who thought it was not lively enough. Thus, it was as if a grand football match was about to begin. After 3 to 4 days of publicity, almost all the adventurers chose to rest today. Some even opened gambling houses to display the purpose of entertainment incisively and vividly. Not only that, a stage was set up in front of the headquarters of the guild. A guild staff held a magic stone product that could be used as a microphone and made a loud and clear voice in the crowd below the stage. Hello, everyone. I am the broadcaster responsible for the live broadcast of this war game. Please take care of me. Although the guild forbade direct conflicts between family members, for a war game like this, the guild would generally work with merchants to promote it. By doing so, it could liven up the atmosphere of the city and turn the war game into a kind of entertainment performance, instead of giving people a feeling of indulgence in the private fights between the family clans, and bringing the ordinary citizens an uneasy feeling of underground fists. Another purpose was to be able to make a fortune like this, just like holding a festival. The propaganda of the gods played an obvious role, and the secret operation of the guild definitely helped a lot. In addition, such activities were used to show the strength of Eulalia to the world, like a demonstration, and attract talented and promising adventurers to this city. Most importantly, war games were also an extreme form of entertainment that the gods pursued. When the people in Eulalia were lively, the gods began to gather in the Tower of Babel. On the 30th floor of the Tower of Babel, most of the gods who looked forward to war games more than anyone else came here. Hestia and Apollo were among them. How is it? Apollo said to Hestia with his usual dazzling smile. That child should be ready to come to me, right? Of course, I'm ready, Hestia said as she glanced at Apollo. Get ready to defeat all of your children. Well, this is the only time you can force yourself. Apollo shrugged lightly. He didn't take it seriously at all. He just looked at the sky outside the window and said this. It should be about time, right? The war games will begin at noon. And now, it was almost noon. Loki, who was sitting at the head of the table, glanced at all the gods around him and said loudly. Since it's almost time, let's begin. All right. All the gods in Eulalia responded in unison. Then, they reached out their hands and snapped their fingers. But at this very moment. Wang! In Eulalia's world, whether it was the tavern, the street corner, or the front of the guild headquarters, many projection-like screens suddenly appeared in the air. On the screen, a city was reflected on it. That was the city that Apollo's minions were guarding. Wow! The countless round screens that appeared in every corner of the city caused a commotion in the sky above the city. Such an incredible thing could only be done by a god. In the lower realm, the gods had set a rule that they could never use the power of a god. If a god was found to be using the power of a god in the lower realm, that god would be sent back to the heavens. However, there were exceptions to everything. In the lower realm, the only power of a god that was allowed to be used was the ability called God's Mirror, which was similar to clairvoyance. This ability could broadcast everything that happened in a place that the gods wanted to see, no matter how far away it was. In order to allow the gods to enjoy the activities planned in the lower realm, this was the only exception that was allowed to be used. Of course, it could only be used when entertainment and activities such as war games were taking place. Otherwise, if it was used in private without permission, it would be banned. With this ability, even if it was far away from the war game, the people in Eulalia could see the whole process. Therefore, when the citizens began to clamor, the broadcaster in front of the guild headquarters began to explain. This time, the war game will be carried out by Hestia's family and Apollo's family. It will be a siege battle. First, we can see that the members of Apollo's family are ready in the city. Next, although it's hard to believe, I have to tell you that Hestia's family is only going to send one member out. So, where is this Noah Doria who has been rumored to be a god during this period of time? The bell announcing the start of the war is about to ring. The broadcaster's tone was very excited, and it brought everyone's emotions to the peak. Until, at a certain moment, the sound of a huge bell suddenly rang out. Clang! Accompanied by such a loud bell, the live broadcaster announced loudly. I announce. The war game belongs to Hestia's family and Apollo's family. It officially begins. Oh! Cheers that resounded through the sky rushed into the sky. On the other side, in a city far away from the Great Wall, the handsome human young man, Yacentos, sat on a throne in the middle of the city. Through the window, he looked at the city that was filled with members of his guild. The war was in the form of a siege war. The war would last for 3 days. As long as Yacentos, the general, could survive these 3 days or make the only member of the enemy, Noah Doria, unable to fight, it would be the victory of Apollo's family. However, if Noah broke into the city and defeated Yacentos, the leader of Hestia's family, it would be the victory of Hestia's family. In this situation, Yacentos looked out of the window with a gloomy expression filled with hatred. It's obvious that that guy won't break into the city openly. He will definitely choose to sneak in, find me, and kick me off the throne to win, right? Because of this reason, Yacintos gathered almost half of the members of his family tribe around him, and the rest were all patrolling the city. It could be said that the city was heavily guarded. This city was actually quite big. Originally, this was a fortress that was not enough to defend with 110 people. Therefore, Yacintos' arrangement reduced the number of soldiers in the city by half, and the number of soldiers in the city became even more insufficient. It doesn't matter. Anyway, that guy will definitely come here. Yacentos clenched his hand that was on the armrest of the throne, and his handsome face was twisted. When you come here, I will make you pay for the humiliation from a few days ago. Yacentos admired Apollo very much. From the beginning, Yacentos was full of jealousy and hatred toward Noah, who was favored by Apollo. This was the reason why Yacentos didn't hesitate to kill Abel as soon as he found an opportunity. Unfortunately, Yacentos' strength was only worth a kick from Noah. Recalling the embarrassment and humiliation that day, the hatred in Yacentos' heart began to boil. I won't let you go. I will never let you go, Noah Doria. At this moment, an instinctive sense of crisis suddenly appeared in Yacentos' mind, and his expression froze. Leader. A member of the group suddenly pointed outside and shouted with a face full of shock. There. Yacentos looked outside almost subconsciously. Then, Yacentos saw it. The originally clear sky suddenly seemed to be boiling, and a layer of dark clouds suddenly rolled up, like a whirlpool madly rolling up. What happened? Chapter 899. Dang! When the bell that announced the start of the war game rang from an unknown direction and spread throughout the ancient ruins, unlike Eulalie who was excited, the members of the Apollo family who were acting as soldiers in the city at the center of the battlefield felt their hearts skip a beat. This time, the war game was in the form of a siege battle, and the battle time was set to be 3 days. Although there was only one opponent, and it was a bit of an exaggeration to say that he was alone, the opponent was able to fight head-on with the only LV-7 in Eulalia for a period of time, and he was able to kick the strongest leader of Apollo's minions, Jacinthus, around like a ball. Therefore, even if they had an unparalleled advantage in terms of numbers and terrain, these people who belonged to Apollo's clan were all nervous when they thought about the strength of the enemy. So the atmosphere in the city was immediately heavy. However, compared to the heavy and tense atmosphere in the city, the atmosphere on the city wall was quite relaxed. After all, the opponent is only one person. No matter how strong he is, he can't directly attack the city from the front, right? A group of archers who were standing guard on the city wall focused most of their attention on the vast plain outside the city. While observing the movement on the plain, they were actually talking to each other. There was almost no cover on the plain in front of the city. As long as there was no problem with eyesight, it was basically impossible to miss the movement on the plain. In addition, no one thought that Noah would be stupid enough to come from the front and attack the city gate directly. Therefore, the people who were responsible for guarding the city wall were the least pressured. The opponent will definitely find a way to sneak into the city and directly attack the leader. That's right. Otherwise, do you really want to rely on one person to attack the city? Only a fool would do that. The members of Apollo's clan who were guarding the city wall believed so. Well, maybe the opponent will use magic on the first day to test the thickness of the city wall? If he can use magic to break the city wall, then he should choose to attack the city from the front, right? But, unfortunately, we are archers. Yeah. Generally speaking, the power and range of the magic was proportional to the length of the spell that needed to be chanted. If it was the kind of magic that needed a very long chanting time, then the power of the magic would definitely be unimaginable. That level of magic was more than enough to burn down an entire forest. It was not impossible to use it to break through the city walls. However, the longer it took to cast a powerful spell, the greater the consumption of spiritual energy would be. When using magic, mental strength would gradually transform into mana as the incantation was chanted. Naturally, the more concentration he consumed, the stronger the mana he converted into mana, and the easier it was for others to sense his mana fluctuations. Therefore, if it was an extremely long incantation that could break through the city walls, it would probably be discovered by the people on the city walls halfway through. At that time, as long as a rain of arrows rained down while chanting magic, the enemy who couldn't be distracted would instead become a real target. It was because of this that these archers were so relaxed. The enemy would definitely not attack head-on. Instead, they would try to sneak into the city and take down the general directly. That was what all the people guarding the city thought. Therefore, everything that happened next was simply a nightmare that would haunt those who believed so strongly in the spawn of Apollo for the rest of their lives. An archer who was chatting happily with his companion inadvertently caught a glimpse of the scenery in front of him. He was stunned for a moment before he cried out in surprise. "Look over there." Amidst the exclamation of the archer, all the archers on the city walls were stunned. They turned their heads and looked at the front of the plain. Immediately, all the archers on the scene saw it. On the vast plain, right in front of the city, a figure slowly walked towards them while facing the strong wind. The hem of his knee-length coat fluttered in the wind, appearing very mysterious. Although there was still a distance between them, all the archers on the city walls could clearly see the appearance of the person. A human with black hair and black eyes. Apart from the only member of Hestia's clan who was the opponent of Apollo's clan in this war game, who else could it be? Naturally, it was Noah. In front of all the archers on the city walls, Noah walked alone while facing the wind. He didn't chant any magic incantations, nor did he conceal himself. He just walked silently. Looking up at the Apollo's spawn, who were gaping at him from above, Noah smiled all of a sudden. That smile made the hearts of the archers of Apollo's minions tremble. Release. Release the arrows. On the city wall, an archer's hysterical yell resounded. Then, under the inexplicable fear, all the archers hysterically raised their longbows and aimed downwards. Whoosh 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 whoosh. After 2 or 3 seconds, an overwhelming rain of arrows immediately poured down from the city walls. They drew a perfect parabola in the air and shrouded Noah. Noah's field of vision was completely shrouded by the overwhelming rain of arrows. However, Noah's expression didn't change at all. Even the rhythm of his footsteps didn't change at all. He still slowly walked forward as if he intended to walk towards the overwhelming rain of arrows. Everyone who saw this scene exclaimed in surprise. Bang! Just as the overwhelming rain of arrows was about to envelop Noah's body, a storm-like mana wave surged from Noah's body, turning into a substantial shockwave with Noah as the center. The shockwave spread to the surroundings with Noah as the center. Boom! Accompanied by the shockwave of magic wave, the rain of arrows that shrouded the city seemed to have hit an invisible wall and scattered without any suspense. What? The archers on the city walls were all stunned. Noah's footsteps didn't stop from beginning to end. He walked forward at a leisurely pace as if he was taking a stroll. The next moment, a voice that seemed to come from the horizon clearly reverberated over the entire battlefield. I, with a violent heart, tightly cover the sky. I declare, roll up a storm for me, rain for me, and never allow you to disobey my orders. That was a lie to provoke the gods in the sky. That was the spirit of words that made the gods, who were enemies, tremble. When the spirit of words that had stepped into the realm of gods and released the power to kill gods resounded over the entire battlefield, in Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate that was connected with 10 patterns, and the pattern representing the storm, lit up. Buzz! The whole sky trembled extremely abruptly, and then it suddenly turned dark. A thick layer of dark clouds appeared out of thin air, suddenly covering the whole sky, and like a lake that was stirred up, it madly rotated. After a while, a whirlpool-like layer of dark clouds was imprinted in everyone's eyes. At the same time, an extremely oppressive atmosphere pervaded the whole world. What's going on? Whether it was the gods and people in Eulalia or the adventurers in the city, they were all shocked by the sudden change in the sky. Therefore, no one noticed it at all. In front of the city, Noah's footsteps had already stopped. He raised one of his hands and waved it down heavily. Whoosh! A huge tornado suddenly appeared from the middle of the vortex in the dark clouds. It shot out like a huge drill that descended from the sky. It pushed against the trembling space and violently landed on the city amidst a wave of ear-piercing whistling sounds. Boom! An earth-shattering sound burst out, causing the minds of everyone who watched the huge tornado descending from the sky to go blank in an instant. Pa-gee, pa-gee, pa-gee. The city that was hit by the huge tornado made a hair-raising cracking sound. It was actually uprooted, and under the ravaging of the tornado, it was twisted into a pile of fragments. Chapter 900. What? What is that? Far away in Eulalia, in the Tower of Babel, a group of gods from the heaven looked at the apocalyptic scene in the divine mirror, and they all fell into an indescribable shock. On the projection-like screen, the magnificent city was being ravaged by a huge tornado that fell from the sky. The city walls were directly destroyed. The buildings were shattered into pieces one by one. Terrifying sand and dust rose from the ground. The world was pitch black. In the city, everything was twisted into pieces of rubble by the huge tornado. The rubble was swept into the tornado and blown into the sky. The gods could even see the adventurers belonging to Apollo's clan tumbling like rags in the huge tornado. It was as if they were thrown into a huge washing machine, constantly churning and making shrill screams. If such a scene couldn't be called terrifying, then what could be considered terrifying? Of course, for these gods, a tornado was nothing. However, from the tornado, every god present felt a sense of destruction, causing the hearts of these transcendental existences to tremble. Yes. Tremble. Gods, tremble. As a result, the entire Tower of Babel began to be filled with a deathly stillness. Compared to the gods who were all shocked on the spot, Apollo was completely stunned as he watched the members of his clan being engulfed by the huge tornado. Hasti, who was sitting in the corner, also opened her eyes wide. She stared blankly at the apocalyptic scene in the divine mirror. For a moment, she didn't know how to react. Hestia knew that Noah was definitely not an ordinary human being. How could an ordinary human be able to perform miracles that had never been done by other humans before? Hestia, who had witnessed Noah's incredible feats with her own eyes, never doubted that Noah was mysterious. She also knew that Noah must be hiding some big secrets. But Hestia didn't expect that Noah's miraculous abilities were still beyond her imagination. What kind of person is that child? A god from an unknown place murmured this sentence, but it was also the deepest thought in the hearts of all the gods present. Only Freya stared at the divine mirror. Standing in front of the city that was gradually being uprooted by the huge tornado, Noah's robe was fluttering wildly in the wind, but he stood still like an indomitable hero. Now, his body was trembling. At this time, in Freya's eyes, the brilliance of Noah's soul, which was originally as hot and dazzling as the sun, instantly soared countless times. If that radiance appeared in the form of light, it would definitely be able to burn and blind the eyes of any god or human. Freya, who saw this scene with her eyes that could see through other people's souls, tried her best to suppress the impulse that surged from the depths of her body. Her cheeks were completely red, and her body became extremely hot. She felt like she was about to burn up. This unprecedented pleasure brought Freya extreme insanity. Ha! Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Ignoring the astonishment of the gods around her, Freya laughed maniacally as if there was no one around her. She laughed maniacally like she would never do in the past. So beautiful. So beautiful. It's too beautiful. In front of others, Freya had always been very careful about her image as a goddess of beauty. However, the brilliance of Noah's soul was so dazzling that Freya couldn't care less. She hugged her body tightly and laughed enchantingly and crazily. From this, one could see how much Noah had stimulated Freya. That little guy actually stimulated that love-struck fool to this extent? Loki stared at Noah's figure. His eyes, which had always been narrowed, opened slightly, revealing a pair of eyes full of wisdom. The corners of his mouth slowly curved up. Interesting, it's really interesting. It's such a waste to let that little dwarf monopolize such a child. Freya. Hestia also noticed Freya's behavior. Her pretty face sank, but her eyes were full of determination. I won't let you touch Noah, never. It wasn't just the gods in the Tower of Babel. Even the residents in Orly, whether humans, elves, dwarves, orcs, or Amazons, were all shocked by the earth-shattering scene. However, these residents of the lower realm were not like the gods, who could feel the sense of destruction that the huge tornado carried that even the gods could not ignore. They only knew that Noah had launched a spell that could destroy the entire city in an instant. Oh! At that moment, the entire Orly was filled with earth-shattering cheers. Many people who were inextricably linked to Noah were also watching the scene. For example, Baal, who was so excited in the headquarters of Hestia's clan that he could not find his bearings. For example, in the headquarters of Sumo's clan, there was a petite little human girl with a frightened face. For example, in Loki's clan, there was a group of first-level adventurers with dull faces. For example, there was a beautiful girl with waist-length blonde hair and bright eyes, who was wearing a bracelet on her wrist and staring intently at Noah, who was standing in front of the huge tornado like an indomitable hero. Whoosh! The huge tornado was still raging on the ground, setting off an amazing gust of wind that swept in all directions. Standing in front of the huge tornado and staring at the disaster caused by his storm incarnation, Noah's pair of dark and deep eyes flashed slightly, and then he cancelled the use of authority. The huge tornado that was raging wildly suddenly stopped. Boom! Without any warning, the huge tornado suddenly burst open, turning into layers of wind and waves, shaking the surroundings and gradually dissipating. Immediately, the debris, rubble, and wreckage of the city swept up by the huge tornado fell from mid-air, like a collapsed mountain of rocks, crashing to the ground with a loud bang. Boom! In the situation where even the ground trembled slightly, a large number of debris, rubble, and wreckage fell in front of Noah, causing a heavy bang and smoke to fill the sky. It didn't take long for the world to return to calm from the state of destruction just now, as if nothing had happened. However, the sturdy city had been completely reduced to ruins. This told everyone that everything was real. In the ruins of the dilapidated city, the members of Apollo's clan were either buried under the rubble or lying on pieces of broken building wreckage. All of them were motionless. Although they looked like they were dying, in fact, these people didn't suffer much damage at all, they just fainted. After all, the tornado just now was mainly used by Noah to destroy the city. The power had been deliberately suppressed by Noah to the point where it wouldn't kill people. Looking at the huge ruins, Noah curled his lips, lifted his feet, and walked purposefully in one direction of the ruins. After crossing the piles of rubble, pieces of debris, and wreckage of buildings, Noah came in front of a person lying on the ground and looked at him condescendingly. "How do you feel, Captain Jacintos?" It was none other than Jacintos. Under Noah's purposeful control, the rest of the people didn't die, they just fainted. Only Jacintos still maintained a certain degree of consciousness. Jacintos, who was lying on the ground, raised his head with difficulty and looked at Noah, who was looking at him condescendingly. He looked around at his companions who had fallen in the ruins, and his body began to tremble. "You! How dare you!" Like an injured beast, Jacintos roared at Noah with his eyes wide open. "I want you to die." With a roar, Jacintos' body suddenly shot out, and he viciously pulled out the wavy long sword, which directly tore the air apart and attacked Noah with a sharp sound. Chapter 901. Hiya. In the roar that was no different from the roar of a wild beast, Jacintos, who was holding the wavy sword, madly dashed toward Noah with bloodshot eyes. At this moment, Jacintos, whose rationality had completely collapsed, only had hatred for Noah left in his heart. As a result, Jacintos, who had fallen into madness, suddenly forgot about it. Not long ago, when he faced Noah alone, what happened to the leader of the Apollo clan, who only had LV-3? A cold light flashed in Noah's eyes as he looked at Jacintos, who was charging at him. Noah had always hated mindless massacres. Therefore, Noah purposely suppressed the power of the storm for the ordinary members of Apollo's minions who were once forced to join Apollo's minions by various underhanded means. He only allowed the storm to destroy the city and did not cause much damage to the members of Apollo's minions. But Jacintos was different. From the very beginning, this person harbored strong enmity, malice, and even killing intent towards Noah. Therefore, Noah didn't let Jacintos die under the power of the storm incarnation. Firstly, it was not good to kill him in front of so many people. Secondly, he planned to defeat him with his own hands. He had completely and utterly defeated this true enemy. Thus, facing the violently chopping wave sword, Noah only took a step forward, his body strangely tilting to one side. Swish! In the next moment, the sharp long sword that was suffused with a cold light brought along a sharp wind as it brushed past Noah's chest and landed in the air. "Die!" Jacintos roared crazily, and his eyes turned red. His hand moved, and the wavy long sword slashed out horizontally like an arc light. Looking at the sudden change in Jacintos' attack, the corner of Noah's mouth curled up, and he sneered. He suddenly clenched his fist and punched out, heavily colliding with Jacintos' wavy longsword. Of course, Noah wasn't stupid enough to use his body to block a sharp weapon. Even if Noah had the durability ability that was far beyond the ordinary LV-2, even if he used the enhanced magic, there was no way to make his body hard enough to not be injured. Therefore, Noah's punch accurately landed on the side of Jacintos' wavy sword, which was the flat surface of the sword. Clang! Accompanied by the sound of metal colliding, a huge force suddenly burst out from the wavy long sword and shook the hand of Jacintos, who was holding the sword. Bang! A low muffled sound sounded, but Noah's body didn't move, while Jacintos' feet touched the ground, and he violently retreated more than 10 meters away. Seeing the fight between Noah and Jacintos and how Noah easily pushed Jacintos back, the gods and people far away in Eulalia all cheered out loud. Now, no one doubted Noah's victory. No. No, in the Tower of Babel, Apollo's hypocritical face finally disappeared completely. What was left was only a pale face, and he was still shouting at the god's mirror. Yacentos. You can't lose. You can't lose. Seeing how Apollo looked as if he was holding on to his last straw, the gods around him looked at him with pity and sympathy. So, didn't I say it? Loki curled his lips. So shallow. On the other side, Yacintos hadn't recovered from the shock yet. He felt that his arm that was holding the weapon was numb, and he let out a muffled groan. In front of Yacintos, Noah just looked up with a calm face and slowly raised one of his hands. Hum. A golden ripple suddenly fluctuated from the back of Yacintos without any warning. Inside, a luxurious knight's sword suddenly appeared. The movement from behind made Yacintos's pupils shrink, and he quickly moved to the side. However, just as Yacintos was about to retreat, the luxurious knight's sword shot out from the golden ripple like a bullet. It was mixed with a sharp force, and it mercilessly shot toward Yacintos's back. Knowing that he couldn't dodge the knight's sword anymore, Yacintos turned around and swung his sword at the knight's sword behind him, ignoring the pain in his body that was caused by the sudden movement of his sword. Clank. The sound of steel colliding with steel was heard. Crack. Almost at the same time, the sound of the wavy sword in Yacintos's hand cracking echoed. Bang. Yacintos's wavy sword, which could only be regarded as a level 3 weapon, was directly shattered into pieces by the noble phantasm that only existed in myths and legends. Immediately afterward, a chain suddenly shot out from the golden ripples that hadn't disappeared yet. Like a whip, it viciously lashed at Yacintos. Dong! With a muffled sound, the chain that turned into a whip hit Yacintos's chest heavily. Poochie! The huge impact from his chest made Yacintos spit out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew backward like an arrow that was released from a bow. In the end, he crashed into a broken wall heavily. The sharp pain hit Yacintos's head, and his vision began to blur as his body fell down. Just as Yacintos's body was about to fall down, a hand suddenly reached out and grabbed Yacintos's neck, hanging him up. Guh. The feeling of suffocation replaced the sharp pain, and Yacintos reflexively grabbed the hand that was grabbing his neck and began to struggle in pain. In the end, Yacintos only saw a pair of dark and deep eyes that were filled with coldness. Since you want to take someone else's life, you should be prepared to be killed by someone else at any time. A voice drifted into Yacintos's ears. In order not to bring trouble to Hestia, I'll leave your life with her for now. In a few days, I'll go and get it myself, together with your most disgusting master god. After that, Yacintos's consciousness began to fade away and completely disappeared. Oh, 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 oh. In the divine mirror, Noah threw Yacintos's head down on the ground like a rag and then turned around and left as if he had done something insignificant. The residents in Eulalia's divine mirror cheered loudly. Dang! The bell that announced the outcome of the battle echoed throughout the city. The battle is over. On the stage of the headquarters of the guild, the broadcaster leaned forward and shouted at the magic stone product in his hand with a red face. The winner is Hestia's family. The announcement of the victory made the residents cheer and the gods in the Tower of Babel laugh with satisfaction. As far as entertainment was concerned, the shock brought by Noah was sufficient entertainment. The gods were satisfied. Only Apollo retreated with a pale face. However, at this time, Hestia suddenly stood up from her seat at the round table and looked at Apollo with the most beautiful smile. That smile made Apollo's heart tremble. I remember that I haven't asked for the victory of the war game, right? Hestia's smile became more and more beautiful as she faced Apollo, who wanted to take her favorite child by force. Have you made up your mind? Apollo finally realized what kind of person he had offended. His face turned pale as he cried out in alarm. Wait. Who will wait for a pervert like you? I've tolerated you for a long time. Hestia shouted angrily. Apollo. I order you with the right of the winner of the war game. I'll confiscate all your property. Disband your clan tribe. I'll banish you forever. You're not allowed to step into Eulalia for the rest of your life. Facing Hestia's merciless order, Apollo screamed miserably. However, Apollo didn't realize that the real punishment hadn't come yet. Chapter 902. In the end, the war game ended with the victory of Hestia's clan, who only sent one person to participate in the battle and defeated the entire clan of Apollo. This war game would undoubtedly become a topic that would be repeatedly mentioned by all the residents of Eulalie in the future. After all, no one could forget that Noah used a tornado to defeat the entire city, and he also defeated the clan of Apollo and played with the level 3 Jacinthus in the palm of his hand. In addition, the previous gods deliberately promoted the fact that Noah could compete with the only level 7 in Eulalie. It was believed that from now on, the whole world would remember the name Noah Doria. No one would doubt it. This person would become a legend. Many people began to look forward to seeing with their own eyes the person who could summon such a devastating tornado with a wave of her hand in Eulalia. On the other hand, as the loser, Apollo's family clan began to obey Hestia's request and disbanded immediately. Those who had received Apollo's favor would all be liberated by Apollo, and they would no longer belong to him. After being liberated by Apollo, the favor of these former members of the clan of Apollo would not disappear. Even if Apollo was really dead, those favor would not disappear. Hestia also said that the favor of the gods was at best an accelerant used to draw out the possibility of the people in the lower realm. In such a case, the possibility of the people in the lower realm that had been drawn out naturally would not disappear. However, without the main god, the ability value could no longer be updated, and the favor from the gods would also lose its vitality, so the possibility of being drawn out would be in a frozen state. There was no way to enhance the ability of the people who received the favor. Including basic ability, development ability, magic, skills, and so on, all would be sealed. Of course, it was only because of the loss of the main god that the effect could not continue to be maintained, but the possibility of being drawn out did not disappear. When these people rejoined the clan and received the blood of the main god of other clan, the sacred text, engraved on the back of these people would once again exert its effect without any decrease. Therefore, some of these former members of Apollo's clan began to explore their future path, some accepted the recruitment of other clans, and some were unable to recover from the setback. Everyone had their own path of development. Naturally, a small number of people who were really fascinated by Apollo would continue to follow Apollo and leave Eulalie. For example, Jacinthus. This person would definitely leave with Apollo. As for all the property left by the clan of Apollo, it all belonged to the clan of Hestia. In the dark night, at the city gate of Eulalie, a group of people came out of the city sparsely. Looking around at the few members who were following him, Apollo recalled the glory days of the past. His face was filled with bitterness. Those adorable children that I finally managed to get my hands on have all left me? This was the result of forcefully seizing and using all kinds of pestering and underhanded methods to pursue the person one liked. As a result, except for the people led by Jacinthus, more than 80% of the clan of Apollo did not choose to follow Apollo, and they left this god who was extremely dirty in all aspects without hesitation. Apollo, are we just going to let it go like this? Jacinthus' face was full of unwillingness. It's all because of that Noah dole that we have fallen to this state. Apollo, that man is not worthy of so much love from you. Like Jacinthus, the rest of the people who followed Apollo more or less showed some unwillingness and hatred. It can't be helped, Jacinthus. That child is too outstanding, too dazzling. Even Goddess Freya and Goddess Loki are trying to get that child. How can I, Apollo, not be captivated by him? Apollo sighed with some sadness, but in the next second, he showed a somewhat ugly smile. However, since I can't get that child, then let me leave some gifts for him. Hearing this, Jacinthus' eyes lit up, and the unwillingness and hatred on his face eased a little. Although he was obsessed with Apollo, because of this, no one knew Apollo better than Jacinthus. With the vile divinity of Apollo, who did not hesitate to use any underhanded means to force the person he fancied into his arms, now that he had finally stumbled in front of a person, how could there not be some trouble left behind? Even if I can't get that child, I have to leave a deep impression on that child. Apollo's dazzling smile as usual bloomed in the dark night. Whether it's love or hate, as long as I can make that child remember me, I have to try, right? As soon as this sentence fell from Apollo's mouth, a cold voice sounded and drilled into the ears of everyone present. I think, let me leave an unforgettable impression on you. When that cold voice sounded and drilled into the ears of the remaining members of Apollo's family led by Apollo, everyone present was shocked, and they suddenly raised their heads and looked forward. They saw that under the dark moonlight, a figure appeared on a tree without them noticing. Leaning against the trunk, he looked down at the group of people led by Apollo with a faint smile on his face that made everyone feel a slight chill in their hearts. It's you? Apollo said in shock. It's you? Jacinthus was slightly stunned at first, but then his face sank, and hatred appeared in his eyes. Noah Dole. Hearing this name, the group of people who planned to follow Apollo reacted, and like Jacinthus, they looked at Noah with hatred and malice in their eyes. Noah, who was leaning against the trunk, clearly saw the hatred and malice in the eyes of those people, and his voice was full of indifference. It seems that the guys here are not innocent. Even if you kill them, it should be fine, right? Kill them? Apollo was stunned on the spot. Kill them? Those who followed Apollo didn't realize anything from Noah's words at all, and they all looked at each other. Kill them? Only Jacinthus recalled the words he heard before he was defeated by Noah during the war game, and a sense of crisis surged all over his body, causing him to yell out loud. Quick! Kill him! He's here to kill us. However, this sentence instead became the talisman that hastened the death of everyone present. Although the remaining members of Apollo's family didn't understand what was going on, when they heard Jacinthus' order, the hatred and malice in their eyes finally exploded. The hatred and malice in these people's hearts had already reached the limit of the culprit who forced them into this situation. It was to the point that these people had forgotten. This person in front of them was not someone they could deal with. Hiya. Therefore, without any hesitation, except for Jacinthus who was protecting Apollo, the rest of the people raised their sharp weapons and charged toward Noah while roaring. However, at the same time, beside Noah who was leaning against the tree with his arms crossed, golden ripples suddenly flashed in the air like water waves, and weapons popped out one after another. Luxurious weapons such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and other weapons shot out from the golden ripples like arrows leaving their bowstrings. Carrying streams of light composed of golden particles, they shot out like deadly beams of light, piercing through the space and enveloping the charging people. Poochie! 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 There was no surprise at all. Along with the sound of bodies being pierced through, the remaining members of Apollo's family who were not even at LV-3, and some of them were only at LV-1, had their bodies pierced through by the treasures one by one, bringing out bursts of crimson blood. They didn't even have time to scream. These people all fell to the ground. Chapter 903. Peng. Peng, 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 along with a series of dull thuds, the remaining members of Apollo's clan fell to the ground one by one with bright red blood stains, and the life force on their bodies began to disappear gradually. After these people fell to the ground, the noble phantoms that pierced through their bodies also turned into light particles and returned to Noah's treasure vault. What? Apollo's eyes widened as he looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. Of course, Apollo's disbelief was not because he doubted that Noah had the ability to kill those people in an instant, but because he couldn't believe that Noah actually killed them. You! Jacinthus also shouted out in shock. You actually killed them? Hearing this, Noah smirked and looked at Jacinthus with sarcasm. Since you want to kill others, then you should be prepared that your life will be taken away by others at any time. Since you want to kill me, do you think that I will show you mercy? From the beginning, Noah and Hestia didn't provoke anyone, but for no reason, Apollo made things difficult for them. In order to obtain Noah, Apollo did not hesitate to let the people of the Spawn tribe find fault with Noah for no reason and kidnap Baal. His methods could not be described as not despicable. As for Jacinthus, he had even tried to kill Noah many times. Just because of a brainless jealousy, Noah had become a thorn in the other party's side. Noah was the kind of person who would treat others better if they treated him well, and treat others worse if they treated him badly. Apollo and Jacintos made things difficult for him one after another, and this made Noah remember this in his heart. However, because the guild had clearly stated that direct conflicts between clan members were prohibited, Noah didn't blatantly report what these people did. After all, even if Noah didn't care about the guild's rules, his clan would still be banned by the guild. In that case, Hestia and Baal would definitely be implicated. In order to not let Hestia and Baal be implicated, Noah deliberately took a big detour and waited until today. Now, the entire clan of Apollo had been disbanded, and the innocent people who were forced by Apollo had all left Apollo's side. Only these people who were on Apollo's side were left. In addition, Apollo had been exiled from Eulalia forever, so even if Noah killed these people here, it wouldn't attract anyone's attention. I have tolerated you for a long time. Noah jumped down from the tree and landed steadily on the ground. There were golden ripples floating behind him like a shadow, and they moved with Noah's movement. Raising his head, Noah looked at Apollo and Jacintos, whose expressions changed drastically. He no longer concealed the coldness in his eyes and released a shocking murderous intent. Today, let me settle this score with you. Feeling the shocking murderous intent from Noah at this moment, not to mention Jacintos, Apollo was the first one who couldn't take it. He took a step back and screamed with a pale face. Yeah. Jacintos. Hearing the screams of Apollo, although Jacintos was also shocked by the shocking murderous intent, and his body was frozen on the spot, the fear in his heart aroused even more intense unwillingness and hatred towards Noah, making him scream hysterically. You, a lowly and weak adventurer from a clan, want to kill me? Dream on. Twice. From beginning to end, Jacintos had been defeated by Noah twice without being able to fight back. Jacintos knew that with his strength, there was no way he could win against this terrifying opponent in front of him. However, in the previous two battles with Noah, Jacintos also had trump cards that he hadn't used yet. To be precise, it should be said that in the face of Noah's terrifying strength that was far above his own, Jacintos didn't have time to use his trump card twice, and he was easily defeated by Noah. This time, Jacintos wouldn't overestimate himself and challenge Noah again. Facing the executioner who was releasing his murderous intent, Jacintos, who knew that he couldn't challenge Noah at all, didn't hesitate to use his last trump card, which was also his last hope of surviving from Noah's attack. It was a trump card that could bring someone back to life, magic. Jacintos, who couldn't use his own strength to resist Noah, could only use the only trump card that could turn the situation around. Jacintos immediately jumped back with all his strength. My name is Love, the darling of light, I offer myself to my son dash, my name is Sin, the envy of wind, I summon a gust of wind to be dash, cast will of fire, come on, wind of the west. In this jump, under the threat of death, Jacintos chanted his magic incantation at an unprecedented speed, and the huge amount of magic power transformed from his mind power surged back and forth around Jacintos. Seeing this, Noah narrowed his eyes, but he didn't stop Jacintos. He just stood there without moving. Seeing this, Jacintos was happy and angry. He was happy that Noah didn't want to stop him from using magic. He was angry that Noah underestimated him. Under the control of his emotions, Jacintos roared, twisted his upper body, lowered his center of gravity, and lowered his left arm while raising his right arm high. His posture was like a sports player throwing a discus. Wang! The magic power that surged around Jacintos suddenly condensed on his right hand and turned into a bright, hot disc that looked like the outline of the sun. Zephylos dash. As Jacintos roared the name of the magic spell, he swung his arm and pushed his right hand hard, throwing out the big disc that looked like a real discus. Wang! The bright and dazzling sun suddenly rotated at a high speed, emitting a trembling sound that caused the space to tremble. It cut through the space like a ferocious cutting machine, bringing along a stream of light as it shot directly in Noah's direction. Whoosh! However, at the same time, a luxurious spear suddenly bounced up from a golden ripple behind Noah and shot out like a meteor. With a sharp piercing sound, it collided with the dazzling sun that was coming at him. Dong! A muffled sound that shook the air suddenly sounded. A burst of extreme shockwaves exploded. The bright, dazzling sun only froze for a moment. Then, it was pushed back by the spear that collided with it. Bang dash. Therefore, the bright, dazzling sun directly exploded under the unparalleled impact, scattering into sparks all over the sky. Yacentos didn't even have time to react before the luxurious spear shot out from the sparks all over the sky. Under Yacentos' horrified expression, the spear resisted the fierce wind and landed on Yacentos' chest. Puck dash. The sharp spear pierced through Yacentos' chest, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Then, the spear that pierced through Yacentos' chest continued to fly forward without slowing down. It carried Yacentos' body and landed on Eulalie's city wall like a bullet. Clang dash. With a sound of metal colliding, the spear was nailed to the city wall. Naturally, Yacentos, who was pierced through the chest by the spear, was also nailed to the city wall. His eyes were wide open, and blood was flowing out of his mouth and chest, but he couldn't move anymore. Yacentos was dead. Yacentos! Apollo let out a miserable cry. However, at this moment, golden ripples began to reverberate around Apollo, surrounding him within. In the next second, silver chains with wedges of different shapes burst out from the golden ripples. They wrapped around Apollo's body and wrapped around him. Pa! As the chains were pulled, Apollo screamed in pain as he was lifted into the air. Chapter 904. From the moment Yacinthus decided to use magic to gamble everything, to the moment Noah used his noble phantasm to defeat Yacinthus' last resort, Noah killed Yacinthus and hung Apollo up with Enkidu. The whole process didn't even take 20 seconds. In 20 seconds, Yacinthus, who was a LV-3 adventurer, was killed, and Apollo, who was the main god of Apollo's family, was also bound. Such a rapid development made Apollo's mind a little blank. He was stunned and couldn't move. At this time, in Apollo's heart, there was finally a feeling called regret. For Apollo, he just wanted to get what he wanted, and he didn't consider the feelings of those who were harassed by him. Therefore, Apollo never felt that what he did was wrong, and he never felt that there was anything wrong with it. Therefore, even if he was defeated in the war game, even if Hestia announced the disbandment of Apollo's family as the winner, Apollo didn't feel any regret. After all, for these gods, the joy, anger, sorrow, and other things that could lead to these feelings were just a kind of enjoyment. The regret in Apollo's heart was also a kind of enjoyment that belonged to the gods. In the hearts of the gods, this lower realm was actually a game to experience life. Therefore, Apollo didn't realize. Tonight, the person who appeared here to completely solve the remaining problems of Apollo's family was not going to end the game called life, but the life of a god. Looking at Apollo's face full of regret, Noah's eyes flashed, and he reached out his hand to a golden ripple on the side. Wang! In the tremor of the golden ripple that seemed to be imprinted in space, a long spear like floating from the water bounced out of the golden ripple, and it just happened to fall into Noah's outstretched hand, and it was pulled out by Noah from the golden ripple. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a long spear that was dark red in color. However, there wasn't only one spearhead of the long spear. Instead, it was like a fork, like a parallel line. It was divided into two, and stretched out in a forked shape. Holding the two-pronged dark red spear, Noah lifted his foot and slowly walked towards Apollo. Only then did Apollo realize that Noah was walking towards him with a dark red forked spear in his hand. Apollo's eyes widened and his lips began to tremble. Wait. Wait. What do you want? Noah didn't even bother to pay attention to Apollo. His face was still cold as he resolutely walked towards Apollo. Are you going to attack me? Apollo shouted in shock. Are you crazy? It was no wonder that Apollo was so shocked. This was because to the people of this world, the act of killing a god was an absolute taboo. Only a god could attack a god. Once a god was fatally injured, the divine power sealed within his body would automatically activate to maintain his body's life. Therefore, even if a god was killed in the mortal realm, he wouldn't die. However, if a god was injured and needed to activate his divine power to restore his identity and power, then according to the rules set by the gods, even if he didn't use it voluntarily, he would be regarded as using divine power and would be forcibly sent back to heaven. Under such circumstances, Apollo's heart was filled with two other emotions that were on par with regret. First, he was shocked. He was shocked that Noah dared to attack a god despite the absolute taboo. Second, he was anxious. Anxiously, if Noah really did not hesitate to commit a great taboo to kill him, Apollo, whose divine power had been triggered, could only be sent back to the heaven realm. This was something Apollo absolutely didn't want to accept. Wait. Child. Calm down. At that moment, Apollo's voice became like a scream. I admit that I was possessed this time. I shouldn't have attacked you. But that's also because you're too outstanding and too cute. For Hestia's sake, please let me go this time, okay? Hearing Apollo's pitiful pleading, Noah finally arrived in front of Apollo. Looking at Apollo's deathly pale face, he sneered. Whoosh! Without any warning, Noah spun the dark red spear in his hand and performed a beautiful spear dance. As Apollo's expression changed, the relic in his hand turned into a red lightning bolt and pierced towards Apollo with a sharp wind. Slash! The familiar sound of a body being pierced echoed in the air. The dark red spear pierced through Apollo's chest and crushed his heart. Apollo opened his mouth and let out a silent scream. He stared at Noah with his eyes wide open and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Let you go this time? Noah, who was holding the dark red spear, laughed sarcastically. Then, have you ever thought of letting go of those innocent people whose lives were almost ruined by you, who were taken by force, just this once? Apollo's eyes widened and finally, the light in his eyes began to fade. Clang! At that moment, a strong light that was stronger than any light in the world burst out from Apollo's body and illuminated the darkness. Undoubtedly, the divine power in Apollo's body, which was fatally injured, was triggered automatically to save Apollo's life. The dazzling light kept flowing around Apollo's body and restored the light in his eyes that was about to fade away. Buzz! However, at that moment, the dark red spear that pierced through Apollo's heart suddenly trembled and released a red light that was even brighter than the light that burst out from Apollo's body. Under this dazzling red light, the light flowing around Apollo's body trembled violently and was actually dispelled. The red light that blossomed from the dark red spear also poured into Apollo's body and attacked Apollo's body that had recovered the identity of a god and even the life in this body. Ah 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 ah. Apollo finally let out an uncontrollable scream. Do you think that I'm just going to send you back to heaven? Noah was indifferent and even smiled indifferently. Unfortunately, you're wrong. I want you to completely disappear from any corner of this world. After saying that, Noah poured the magic in his body into the dark red spear in his hand like a flood. This spear had a name that was impossible for anyone not to know. Longinus spear. It was a spear that was clearly recorded in the Bible that pierced through the Son of God named Jesus. Because of this incident recorded in the Bible, this spear had the power to cause harm to God. Therefore, it was also known as the Spear of God. Through the hands of Gaia and Aleia, this spear fell into Noah's hands. The ability of this gun was similar to that of the Enkidu, which was also an armament used against the gods. The Heavens Lock's ability was that the higher the target's divinity, the stronger it would become. The Longinus spear's ability was that the higher the target's divinity, the more damage it would cause. With Apollo's rank as a god, his divinity was high enough to instantly kill him. Thus, in the midst of Apollo's mournful screams, he who was tightly bound by the silver chains was suddenly swallowed by the red light and turned into a burst of light particles, gradually disappearing. Apollo, dead. Perhaps, until the end, Apollo would never believe that in this game called the Lower Realm, he would actually lose his life. However, this world doesn't have Pandora's great curse, so it's impossible for the person who killed God to obtain God's authority. Leaving this sentence, Noah was just about to turn around and leave when a burst of brilliant white light suddenly appeared in front of his eyes from where Apollo turned into light particles and disappeared. Seeing this, Noah's footsteps stopped as he was stunned. It can't be. Chapter 905. Clang. In the space where the existence called God was annihilated in the long river of history and turned into a burst of light particles and dissipated, an incomplete feather that was flowing with extremely pure white light slowly floated down and suspended in the space in front of Noah. Looking at the incomplete holy feather, Noah was completely stunned. He even stretched out his hand towards the incomplete feather with some uncertainty. The next moment, the incomplete feather that only Noah could see was like a bird returning to its nest. With a tremor, it floated without hesitation towards Noah's outstretched hand and gently fell into Noah's palm. Feeling the weightless but extremely familiar touch, Noah's somewhat disbelieving expression gradually turned into a wry smile, and finally, it turned into a dumbfounded expression. So that's how it is. This kind of thing can also happen. Noah really didn't expect that he would actually find the lost world fragment in this world under such circumstances. Originally, Noah planned to temporarily train the ability value he got from Hestia, and after confirming how much help the world fragment brought to him, he would think of a way to find the world fragment. Who would have thought that, in order to get rid of a perverted god who was obviously a male but had designs on her, she had accidentally caused the world fragment to appear. As mentioned before, the world fragment existed in various forms. Sometimes it was lodging in an object. Sometimes it was lost in a certain corner. Sometimes it was a substantial existence that was picked up by someone. Sometimes it needed to meet a certain condition to appear. In the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah saw the world fragment because he saw hope and miracle in that world that was facing despair. This time, it was just the same thing happening once again. The difference was that this time, the condition for the world fragment to appear was not to see hope and despair, but to destroy the god who was enjoying the world as a game. If Apollo didn't find Noah and used all kinds of despicable means to challenge Noah's bottom line and arouse Noah's killing intent, then, perhaps, Noah would never be able to find the world fragment in this world. After all, Noah wouldn't suddenly kill a god for no reason, right? Should I say that fate is playing tricks on me? Or is it fate playing tricks on me? After retrieving the world fragment that he accidentally found, Noah looked at the gradually disappearing light particles and smiled slightly. You should feel proud. In the end, your meaningless life made a world be reborn. After saying that, Noah looked around. Looking at the remaining scourges of Apollo's family on the ground and Jacinto's who was nailed to the city wall by a spear, he waved his hand, and golden ripples appeared on the corpses one by one. Immediately, from each golden ripple, a bottle filled with an unknown liquid appeared and smashed on the corpses. Bang, 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 bang. The bottles exploded one by one, and the liquid inside directly drenched the corpses. Bang. Then, a burst of scorching flames suddenly burned from the corpses and covered them all. In this way, including the god, the entire Apollo's family disappeared without a trace. Noah looked at the dark moonlight, turned around, and walked into Orly's house. Cheers. In the base camp of Hestia's family, Noah, Hestia, and Baal were all holding a drink in their hands, and with a crisp, ding sound, they clinked their drinks with each other. At this moment, on the table in front of the three of them, there were plates of hot dishes piled up, and some of them could only be stacked on top of each other. It was obvious that Noah, Hestia, and Baal were holding a small celebration party. It had been several days since the end of the war game. Because they had been busy receiving the property left behind by Apollo's family, Noah and the others hadn't been able to hold a celebration party. Today, when Hestia came back, she immediately said that the property of Apollo's family had been received, and even the base camp of Apollo's family had been sold for money, so they could hold a celebration party. Upon closer inspection, one could see that in the corner of the hall, there were sacks the size of sacks. Of course, those sacks weren't filled with rice, but with golden coins. Those were all brought back by Hestia after she had converted the property of Apollo's family into money. Noah still remembered that Baal's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw those sacks filled with dazzling gold coins. It was really hilarious. But, is this okay? Noah, who had finished his drink, looked at Hestia and asked. Forget about the other things, but the base camp of Apollo's family is said to be very grand. Why did you sell it? Don't you want to live in a grand house? It must be known that Apollo's family was the backbone of the forces in Orally. There were 110 combatants who participated in the war game alone. To let so many people live in a base camp, one could imagine the size of the base camp. Even if it couldn't be compared to the base camp of Loki's family, which could accommodate thousands of people, it definitely wouldn't be worse than this house that could only accommodate 3 people. Why didn't Hestia want to move there? There's no need for that now, Hestia said without hiding anything. Not only did you buy this house, Noah, but we've also lived here for less than 2 months. I feel a little reluctant to give it up so casually. Anyway, there are only 3 of us, so there's no need to live in such a big place. I'm very satisfied with this place. I also think this place is good, Baal nodded and said embarrassedly. I won't be used to living in a place that's too big. But, I don't think it's good to sell the mansion so casually, Noah scratched his cheek and said. After the war game, after seeing my performance, there should be a lot of people who want to join our clan tribe. Well, although it sounds like I'm bragging a bit. You're not boastful, Noah, Hestia corrected him. Your performance in the war game was without a doubt the best. That's right. Baal nodded even more quickly as if he wanted to increase the credibility of his words. Captain, you were really amazing that day. You destroyed a city with a single spell. You defeated the entire Apollo's family single-handedly. I'm sure many people in Orly are starting to admire you, Captain. I'm embarrassed to be told that by my own people. Noah smiled embarrassedly and shrugged. If that's the case, many people will want to join our family. When that time comes, this small place won't be able to accommodate so many people, right? You're right. Hestia's expression became a little uncertain. It's just that I don't want to suddenly increase the number of members. You don't want to suddenly increase the number of members? Baal was stunned. You don't want to suddenly increase the number of members? Noah was also stunned. Why is that? Hearing this, Hestia couldn't help but recall what had happened when the war game announced the victory of Hestia's family. She had judged Apollo and waited until the gods began to leave the Tower of Babel. After Hestia judged Apollo, the gods who were gloating over Apollo's misfortune took the initiative to escort Apollo and witness him passing the property of Hestia's family to Hestia. Seeing Apollo being escorted away by the gods, Hestia was in a good mood and planned to follow them. Hestia. At this time, a voice stopped her. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.